I shall not counsel you against fear of the demon. The Emperor knows you have none, but even Psi Cannon and Demon Hammer cannot carry the day against such a foe. For what use is the bolter shell against disease, terror, and madness? No, it is faith. Faith is our impenetrable shield, and when faced with such belief, the demon becomes weak. Faith is our fiery sword, and with it, we burn out the diabolical cancer of chaos wherever it is found. From Lord Inquisitor Hephaestus Grud. The Ordo Malleus was essentially the original heart of the Inquisition, founded in the period after Horus had launched his great rebellion against the Emperor of Mankind. In the days after the crew of the Imperial frigate Eisenstein brought the news of Horus's betrayal to Terra, the Emperor requested that his agent, Malcador the Sigillite, find him men and women of utmost loyalty to the Imperial cause who were willing to investigate threats to the Imperium from both within and without. Malcador eventually brought 12 individuals to the Emperor's notice in the days just before the Siege of Terra began. 4 Imperial lords and administrators of an inquisitive bent, and 8 psychically empowered Astartes of both the Loyalist and traitor Space Marine legions who had remained loyal to the Emperor and served as Malcador's knights errant, his personal agents during the Horus Heresy. The 8 Space Marines became the first Grey Knights Grand Masters, while the 4 mortals founded what became the Inquisition proper. However, the division of the Inquisition that would become known as the Ordo Malleus was not officially formed until the mid-32nd millennium, centuries after the end of the Horus Heresy in the wake of the War of the Beast. The Ordo Malleus was one of the 2 original Ordos Majores of the Inquisition, the other being the Ordo Xenos, created following that great conflict against the Orcs to ensure that the Imperium never again nearly fell to an assault by Xenos. Where the alien hunter inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos concentrate on defeating the many threats that aliens presented to continued human domination of the galaxy, the inquisitors of what slowly evolved into the Ordo Malleus remained focused on the Inquisition's original mission of countering the insidious threat of chaos and the demons of the warp. You must face the truth squarely and without flinching from duty. Our enemies are mortal no longer. Any glimpse of humanity they may show is merely a deception. Dedicate this weapon, given into your hand at the behest of the Emperor, to their destruction. Regard its function as your only duty. You live only to purge the demon. Take up your rod and staff, your armor and Psi Cannon, and go forth. From the lectures to the Ordo, from Inquisitor Galbus here. An Ordo Malleus Inquisitor is sanctioned to call on the aid of any organization of the Imperium. The greatest threat to humanity in the galaxy, that of a demonic invasion of a planet, can only be dealt with by the Grey Knights, the Ordo Malleus's own chamber militant. This Ordo, besides being the demon hunters of the Imperium, is the secretive, inner, and first order of the Inquisition. It is controlled by a council of 169 Inquisitor Lords titled Masters. The Ordo's organization is divided into chambers, each controlled by an Inquisitor Lord called a Proctor. The number of Inquisitors in each chamber can vary from a few score to hundreds. Being a division of the Inquisition, the Ordo Malleus consists of exceptional individuals who have been involved in a covert war for mankind's continued survival for the last 10,000 standard years. As every Inquisitor has sworn oaths to defend the Imperium from its worst enemies, the members of the Ordo Malleus are concerned with eliminating the physical manifestation in real space of chaos itself. They have pledged their existence to the discovery and elimination of the demonic threat to humanity, no matter where they are found. These Inquisitors have at their disposal every organization of the Imperium, and will not hesitate to requisition local troops and forces, arbitrators, or even Astra Militarum or Navis Imperialis forces as needed at a moment's notice. The Ordo Malleus goes to great lengths to hide the existence of chaos and its mortal and demonic servants from the greater masses of mankind, as they fear such knowledge might only increase the number of individuals who fall prey to the corruption of the dark gods. As such, on those rare occasions when the Ordo Malleus is mentioned by name, it is referred to as the watchdog of the Inquisition itself, though its actual purpose as the Imperium's elite demon hunters is known only to those within its employ as acolytes and throne agents. Within the Inquisition, the Ordo forms a secret order that is tasked with the very specific role of serving as the Imperium's primary demon hunters. As such, it is their duty to root out all sources of demonic and chaos cult activity and to combat such forces in whatever form they take. This means that only the most mentally stalwart and psychically able of Inquisitors are tasked to this duty. Their missions can see them engage their foes either in hand-to-hand fighting or battle them in the realm of mental energy, which requires special abilities and powers. This means that the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus are usually psychers. Those who lack such abilities must possess tremendous mental resolve. As they are a highly classified group, the identities of Ordo Malleus Inquisitors are kept secret. When members of the Ordo must appear in public in the course of their investigations, they are allowed to adopt the uniforms of various other Imperial Adepta that hide their features and allows them to keep their true identities a secret. Only the Emperor and the cyber libraries of the Ordo Malleus possess a truly accurate recounting of the events of the Horus Heresy. Among the targets of the Ordo Malleus are the Chaos Space Marines of the Traitor Legions, all Chaos cults consisting of Chaos worshippers and rogue psychers, and the Sensei, who are seen as a threat to the Imperium. It is known that certain Inquisitors of this Ordo have been allowed entry into the Eldari's Black Library and have gained more knowledge of the arch-enemy than almost any other human, save for the Emperor himself. The power and authority of the Ordo Malleus extends beyond the nominal boundaries of the Inquisition. A jurisdictional extension known as the Malleus Remit. In events of grave emergency concerning potential imminent demonic threats, a Malleus Inquisitor may demand the services and resources of any Imperial servant or organization, a request which may not be refused on pain of death. Even the High Lords of Terra and the Adeptus Astartes are beholden to obey the Malleus Remit without hesitation when it is invoked, a responsibility laid down at the end of the Horus Heresy by the Emperor's own decree. Inquisitors of the Malleus were also permanently seconded to the Cadian military due to that now lost world's proximity to the Eye of Terror, making its inhabitants susceptible to the influence and corruption of chaos. In normal circumstances, the Ordo focuses its investigations towards two primary threats. First, the demon without. The most obvious threat is that of the demons, who have psychically manifested in the material universe, and those mortals dedicated to the service of chaos in all its forms. Second, the demon within. The less obvious threat is an internal one, including radical inquisitors who have been declared extremis diabolus for heretical actions in which they adopted the use of the tactics and artifacts of chaos to fight the servants of the archenemy. This duty often overlaps with the duties of the inquisitors of the Ordo Hereticus to seek out all threats to the Imperium from within its own organizations, and can lead to jurisdictional disputes, or even the two Ordos' agents working at cross purposes to each other. To protect its citizens from the insidious temptations of chaos, the Imperium of Man long did its best to hide the existence of the Chaos Gods, demons, and the Chaos Space Marines from public knowledge. Only certain Space Marines, sanctioned psychers, and the members of the Inquisition were permitted to know the Imperium's darkest secret. It was long inquisitorial policy to mind-wipe even members of the Adeptus Astartes, including entire chapters in some cases, after exposure to the demonic. All others are either put to death after exposure to the reality of chaos to protect the Imperium from their possible corruption, or if they have been a valuable servant to the Imperium, they are allowed to live, but required to undergo memory modification, or even, in extreme cases, a mind wipe. This is a policy that has been in place since before the Emperor was interred within the Golden Throne, when only he and his Primarchs knew that the warp contained intelligent entities capable of possessing individuals in real space. But even the Emperor did not reveal to his Primarchs during the Great Crusade the full truth. That the warp was not just a seething cauldron of psychic energies inhabited by entities similar to Xenos, but was actually populated by malign intelligences akin to the supernatural beings of ancient human myth and superstition. He chose not to explain that the Imperium was dominated by the ruinous powers and the demonic servants, for fear that this knowledge alone would lead too many of the Primarchs to take actions that would inevitably result in their corruption. To fight a demon army is to fight a twisting tornado of unreason and despair that forever changes those who must confront its horror. As such, the Imperium believes that it cannot allow the knowledge that such foes actually exist to spread, since even the simple knowledge of Chaos's existence may mark the start of an individual's fall to damnation. The human survivors of conflicts with the demonic were invariably confronted by the agents of the Inquisition and mind-wiped, quarantined for life in forced labor camps, or even in extreme cases, made the subjects of a worldwide exterminatus event. Over the eons, the galaxy has witnessed warp-based catastrophes and demonic incursions beyond counting. Since the inception of the Inquisition after the Horus Heresy, even the fact that such a thing is possible is deemed too dangerous for the citizens of the Imperium to know, for such knowledge breeds heresy as surely as a fly-blown corpse breeds maggots. Because of this, the vast majority of knowledge concerning demonic incursions has been eradicated from extant Imperial public records by the actions of the Inquisition. What is known is recorded only in prescribed Imperial texts and heretical Xenos scripts that the Inquisition has yet to destroy. However, in the wake of the opening of the Great Rift at the start of the era Indomitus, this policy of secrecy has been somewhat relaxed, at least for the Adeptus Astartes, due to necessity. Before the opening of the Great Rift, the vast majority of Astartes were expected to be as ignorant about the existence of demons as any other citizen of the Imperium. In truth, it was hard to find an Astartes who had not fought demons at some point by the end of the 41st millennium. Yet the Inquisition in the time of ending was well known to mind-wipe entire chapters after certain incidents, though not every chapter was willing to submit. Some, like the Space Wolves, resisted any intrusion on their traditional autonomy forcefully, and retained their institutional knowledge of how to fight demons. But in the era Indomitus, with the galaxy now riven in half by the birth of the Cicatrix Maledictum, demonic incursions are so common, and Space Marine responses so necessary, that suppressing the knowledge of the existence of demons among the Astartes has simply become pointless. Now I will explain the Ordos' organization. The Ordo is led by the Inquisitor Lords known as the Hidden Masters. Unlike the other Ordos of the Inquisition, the Ordo Malleus has a more rigid and formalized hierarchical structure. It is controlled by a council of 169 Inquisitor Lords known as Masters, all of whom have the right to have a direct audience with the Emperor himself within the inner sanctum of the Imperial Palace if they so request. Their authority even extends to the inquisitorial representative to the Senatorum Imperialis, some of whom have been tried and executed by the Masters of the Ordo in times past. Below the Masters are the Inquisitors, known as the Proctors and Proctors Minor, with each being responsible for the leadership of a chamber practical of the Ordo Malleus. The chambers practical themselves are named after their founding Proctor and serve as the basic organizational unit of the Ordo. Inquisitors Ordinary form the rank and file of the Ordo, while there exists a parallel organization called the Chambers Theoretical and Historical that consists of agents known as Inquisitors Historical. Inquisitors Historical are drawn from the older members of the Order who are unable to continue their active service, either due to ill health, injury, or infirmity. Instead, they are assigned research and data collation projects at the Inquisitorial and Administratum libraries. Within the Chambers Practical, there are perhaps only a few hundred Inquisitors Ordinary and Historical in total across the galaxy. The Chambers Theoretical and Historical, for their part, possess in total only a few score members that are engaged in research and disputation, whilst the Chambers Practical are comprised of hundreds of Inquisitors who are responsible for operating within the various inquisitorial sector conclaves of which the Ordo Malleus is a part, and joining with agents of the other Ordos of that conclave in the field. The Ordo Malleus works directly under the Emperor's warrant, and thus has a completely free hand in its operations. This means that an Inquisitor Ordinary of this Ordo is able to demand anything they see fit from any adepter or armed service of the Imperium in order to accomplish their duty with no explanation being offered. Any Imperial servant that meets with an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor must comply and obey their command. The most common demand made by them is for troops to support their operations, though such forces rarely survive in the service of an Inquisitor Ordinary. This is not necessarily viewed as a problem by the Inquisitor, however, as they would be forced to mind-wipe or otherwise eliminate those troops who have served them, have been exposed to the realities of chaos. However, high public honors are given to those Imperial units that are attached to the Ordo Malleus should they die in the service of the Inquisition, though the campaigns upon which these honors are earned remain sealed in the archives of the Ordos. Their members tend to favor simple yet sinister uniforms, with black, loose-fitting habits over their armor, along with large hoods that hide their features in shadow. Graphic electus are an unofficial yet traditional addition to this uniform for many Malleus Inquisitors, as their glowing appearance beneath the skin adds a disturbing quality to their appearance, which they find useful in seeking to intimidate outsiders with an air of menace and mystery. By tradition, these Inquisitors tend to have one lectu for each coven of witches or heretics that they have discovered and cleansed. As such, for the oldest members, it is not uncommon for elaborate electu designs to be inscribed all across their body. These designs have been fixed for generations, with the symbols intended to recall in a stylized manner each of the various demons and other chaos foes that the Inquisitor has faced and defeated. The rarely seen or used badge of the Ordo Malleus takes the form of the Imperial Aquila holding a rod and an axe in each talon, which is worn either on the shoulder or on the right breast. Masters and proctors of the Ordo Malleus are always psykers who carry force rods as a symbol of their authority, though in combat engagements this is often supplemented with a power weapon of the Inquisitor's choice. Demons are lies given form. To cast them out, you must only carry the Emperor's truth, for against it all lies crumble. Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus and their acolytes face the greatest threat to humanity's continued existence: chaos and the demons of the warp. The dark gods of chaos are the arch enemies of mankind. The ruinous powers and their demons seek to bring the veil separating the materium and immaterium crashing down and undo reality as we know it, plunging the galaxy into the madness of the warp. Although insidious heretics seek to undermine the Imperium from within and alien abominations attack from without, the demons of the Immaterium whisper their lies from beyond the fabric of reality. Yet when the veil is rent asunder, it is they who invade real space in a great tide, slaughtering and unleashing cataclysmic destruction. Few warriors can even face such a foe without succumbing to terror and madness, and even mere knowledge of such entities is restricted. Only the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus and their acolytes possess the knowledge, strength of will, and tools to stand against the demon. Although demons possess an almost inconceivable threat to mankind, they do face certain limitations. Chief amongst these is the difficulty demons have manifesting and remaining in the material universe. Without the psychic energy of the warp to sustain them, they are able to maintain a corporeal form in real space for only so long. Breaching the veil and entering reality in the first place is only possible under certain circumstances. These limitations mean that the bulk of the Ordo Malleus' work consists not of banishing demons back to the warp, but preventing their arrival in the first place. Some demons are so apocalyptically powerful that there is no hope of defeating them in battle, and the only way to save a world or star system is to ensure the demon does not manifest. For a demon to manifest, the barrier between reality and the warp must be weakened and broken. There are a number of ways this can come about, both due to the actions of mortals and the vagaries of the warp. Even a sanctioned psyker risks opening a gateway to the warp with each use of their powers, and for this reason, some members of the Ordo Malleus share the same anti-psyker views as the most hard-line witch hunters of the Ordo Hereticus, even when they themselves are psykers. Malefic chaos cults often seek to summon demons, either to enact the cult's aims or as a simple act of devotion to the dark gods. The very movements of the war, perhaps fed by the collective emotions of mortals, disturbed by the activities of psykers, or set in motion eons ago, can, in rare cases, push against the veil of reality until it tears open. What all these potentialities share is either a warp rift that allows demons to manifest physical forms in reality, or the possession of a mortal host body. It is not necessary, however, for a demon to manifest in reality in order to threaten humanity. Demons communicate with mortals from the depths of the warp, and psykers are particularly susceptible to these whispers and visions. Often such contact is the precursor to the demon entering reality, as it establishes a link in order to corrupt and possess a mortal, or instruct the mortal in the ways of its summoning. There are many reasons a mortal might fall to a demon's temptation: a lust for power, wealth, adoration, revenge. All of these and more are mortal weaknesses a demon might exploit. Even if the interaction does not lead to the demon's emergence in the physical universe, a mortal under demonic influence might undertake all manner of evil deeds. Powerful psykers and influential figures corrupted by chaos can cause untold damage, igniting wars and leading star systems, even entire sectors, into eternal damnation. Because of the nature of demons, the early stages of Ordo Malleus investigations often deal with mortals in thrall to demons. In many cases, a successful mission might mean preventing a chaos cult from summoning a demon, or destroying a rogue psyker before they succumb to possession. In this way, the work of the Ordo Malleus overlaps with that of the Ordo Hereticus. However, while Inquisitors of the Hereticus focus on the human traitors and witches themselves, the servants of the Malleus concern themselves always with the true threat of the demon. Better to prevent that threat from materializing, but if the worst does happen, the warriors of the Malleus possess the knowledge and tools to fight against it. Their servants must often investigate secretive chaos cults with aspirations to summon demons, or even plunge whole worlds into hellish madness. Depending on the nature of the enemy and the preferred methods of an inquisitorial warband, this might entail infiltrating a cult in order to learn the threat it poses, and even uncover its dark secrets in order to turn such knowledge against other enemies. Other inquisitors might conscript local armed forces in order to flush out the heretics and launch a full-scale assault on their compound. There are many heretics who unknowingly threaten to bring demons into reality. Although a scholar of forbidden lore might not think themselves a devotee of chaos, by opening their mind to the secrets of the warp, they draw the attentions of its denizens. A noble dilettante who collects warp-touched artifacts might unwittingly release the power they contain and open a warp rift. Guardsmen of the Astra Militarum and even Space Marines who enter battle against the forces of chaos, and particularly against incarnate demons, risk corruption that might, if unchecked, transform them into the very enemy they battled against. All too often, though, inquisitors of the Malleus or their acolytes are too late to stop a demonic summoning, or a warp rift might open without warning. Sometimes, an inquisitorial warband's first indication that there is a threat comes from the presence of demons in real space, whether scheming in the shadows or slaughtering in the habways. When demons step foot into the material universe, it is the sacred duty of the Ordo Malleus to banish them back to the Imperium. Often, once a demon is manifest in reality, only inflicting a great deal of damage to its corporeal form can disrupt its hold enough to return it to the warp. For this reason, combat can be a major part of Ordo Malleus investigations. Demons are the most dangerous and horrifying foes imaginable, and even for veteran demon hunters, each encounter is a monstrous experience. Not only are demons powerful adversaries that evince a host of strange warp-spawned abilities, but their mere presence can taint the soul and shatter the minds of hardened warriors. Because of this, inquisitors and acolytes often cannot count on local law enforcement and military forces for aid in combat, as few are likely to possess the strength of will necessary to overcome their fear in the face of demonic foes. In order to successfully battle demons, acolytes must not only be capable combatants, but strong enough of will to maintain their composure. Heavy weapons and sanctioned blades are of no use if the warriors fall apart in the presence of the horrific enemy. The direct military forces employed by the Ordo Malleus are small, as only a select few individuals are trusted by the Inquisition with extensive knowledge of chaos. Demon Hunter strike forces usually consist only of a Malleus Inquisitor, the Inquisitor's personal retinue of acolytes and throne agents, and as many Grey Knights as can be spared if the threat is unusually potent. In battle, The greatest advantage of any Malleus force lies in the specialized and consecrated weaponry available to it, utilizing techniques and metallurgy lost to the rest of the Imperium. Malleus servants and allied Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests produce and maintain immensely powerful arms and armor specifically designed to combat demons, Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Sorcerers, Rogue Psykers, and other warp entities. In addition to this equipment, the Malleus Remit allows any Demon Hunter strike force to be bolstered by units requisitioned or seconded from the Adeptus Astartes, the Astra Militarum, and the Officio Assassinorum. Only the ranks of the Grey Knights are expected to survive in the service to the Order. All other troops that are seconded often see their lives expended, so as to better prevent them from later being corrupted by chaos. Even seconded Space Marines will be subjected to a mind wipe if no other sanction is taken, particularly during the time of ending before the birth of the Great Rift made such precautions largely pointless. Those troops seconded to the missions of the Ordo Malleus inevitably become privy to one of the Imperium's most closely guarded secrets, the existence of chaos as a potent, sentient, metaphysical force within the warp and of the entities rightly called demons who serve the dark gods. As their duty is to keep this threat contained and hidden from the citizens of the Imperium, the Malleus will often execute any troops that survive an encounter with demons or other telltale warp entities. At a minimum, such troops will be mind-wiped and even sterilized to prevent the taint of chaos from creating mutants from amongst their offspring. Those slain in battle, or even as a result of the Inquisition's orders, always receive full honors shortly after their death or execution. Ultimately, all other servants of the Emperor, including other Inquisitors, are seen as expendable in the pursuit of the destruction of humanity's arch-enemy. The exception to this secrecy by extermination policy are units seconded by the Adeptus Astartes, since the execution of a Space Marine is a terrible waste of Imperial resources due to the sheer difficulty of creating these transhuman warriors. Those Astartes not of the Grey Knights serving with the Malleus are mind-scrubbed immediately after their service is completed in order to remove any memory of the Malleus's existence and operational protocols. Ultimately, only the Grey Knights are allowed to retain their memories of their duty within the Ordo, as their centuries of service have proven again and again that they are incorruptible in the face of the temptations of chaos. I will now describe some of the most well-known Imperial regiments. First, the Stormtroopers. Trained from their youth by the Schola Progenium in the arts of war, the Stormtroopers are, perhaps, the finest soldiers ever to serve with the Astra Militarum. Armed with their trademark Hell guns and Hell pistols, these elite soldiers take combat to the heart of the enemy with blinding speed and deadly precision. Their accuracy is aided by their highly protective carapace armor's integrated targeting system. Equipped with the finest weapons and war gear in the Departamento Munitorum's arsenal, Stormtroopers are trained to carry out missions beyond the capabilities of even the most veteran rank-and-file guardsmen. Should a sponsored candidate survive the grueling regimen of harsh training, they eventually become an Imperial Stormtrooper or Tempestus Scion. However, The stormtroopers candidates sponsored by the Inquisition are not meant to join a proper Tempestus Scions unit, nor to deploy alongside the Astra Militarum. Instead, these inquisitorial stormtroopers, with their training complete, are taken by their sponsor to serve a higher purpose, a permanent place on an Inquisitor's retinue of acolytes and throne agents. The Inquisition maintains a string of fortresses scattered throughout the galaxy, some hidden, some extremely well known, and the object of numerous dark legends. Inquisitorial stormtroopers are also used by the Inquisition to guard these fortresses and the black ships and inquisitorial black ships as they make their purity runs across the Imperium sectors, as well as to augment an individual Inquisitor's personal retinue and warband forces with reliable and effective elite soldiers. The stormtroopers are selected from families with a record of unwavering faith in the Emperor and prior duty to the Inquisition. They are trained and equipped in a manner similar to standard Tempestus Scions, albeit lacking the rapid insertion and infiltration skills, as they are not expected to undertake such types of missions. Such activities are more often carried out for the Inquisition by the Officio Assassinoro. And of course, next we have the Grey Knights, who are a mysterious and classified loyalist chapter of Space Marines specifically tasked with combating the dangerous demonic entities of the warp and all who wield the corrupt power of the Chaos Gods. Legend has it that the Grey Knights were founded on the order of the Emperor himself in the final days of the Horus Heresy. Though the chapter's origins are uncertain in many details, it is known that the Emperor ordered the creation of a force specifically mandated to fight chaos after the onset of the galaxy-wide rebellion. This organization, which was eventually named the Imperial Inquisition, was to include a branch of specialized Space Marine warriors, as the heresy demonstrated that a powerful military force was necessary to fight the demonic minions of chaos. The Grey Knights act as the military arm or chamber militant of the Ordo Malleus, the demon hunters who form the oldest branch of the virtually omnipotent Inquisition. The Grey Knights' fortress monastery is based on Titan, the largest of the moons of the gas giant Saturn in the Sol system, that is kept as a private preserve of the Inquisition. The existence of the chapter is virtually unknown outside of the Inquisition and the highest echelons of the Imperial Adepta, and is a well-guarded secret. Unlike other Astartes, every Grey Knight is a potent psyker, yet in the 10,000 standard years of Imperial history, no Grey Knight has ever been corrupted by the ruinous powers of chaos, so pure is their gene seed, said to have been drawn directly from the genome of the Emperor, and so potent their psychic conditioning and faith in the Emperor. Here is a list of all the most notable Ordo Malleus Inquisitors, starting off with Inquisitor Ahmazi. Ahmazi is the Spectarians' sole Ordo Malleus Inquisitor. He is a grizzled and ancient veteran, close on 300 standard years old, whose career has taken him from Titan to the very edges of the Imperium, hunting down demons and the corrupt humans who summoned them. Now all but decrepit, he has come to the Calixis sector to, as he puts it, bask in the radiance of the Tyrant Star and learn its secrets. A long career has left him intensely cynical and pessimistic. He has come to believe that the Emperor is dead, chaos cannot be stopped, and the human race is doomed. The Imperium, Ahmazi believes, is a grotesque symptom of the fact that the human race is currently living through its inevitable and drawn-out extinction. He has dabbled with radicalism in his career, even being declared excommunicate by Puritan colleagues for seeking out demonic knowledge, but no one in the Tyrantine cabal other than Zerb know this. He has no friends and does not particularly care what people think of him, angrily refusing to tell any stories of his astonishing demon-hunting career. Although an acolyte who displays great courage in the face of a demonic foe might win his grudging respect. He was a martially minded inquisitor in his prime, and secretly would love nothing better than to mount up on his mobile war pulpit, don his armor and take up his demon hammer to ride into battle once more against a horde of demonic foes. He believes that the tyrant's star may be the harbinger of man's inevitable doom, and he wants to be at ground zero to witness the great day when it happens. Next, Inquisitor Lord Torquemada Coates. Coates gained his reputation for being a fearsome demon hunter through years of action against the forces of chaos. He is now known as the High Protector of the Formosa sector. With his power and popularity, he is served by literally thousands of acolytes and throne agents, and he arms himself with rare weapons like his anointed demon hammer, artificer power armor, a Glovodon eagle, and various potent relics of the Inquisition. Next, Inquisitor Covenant. Covenant is one of a new breed of demon hunters who hunts down traitorous members of the Inquisition itself and their demon hosts. He trained the Inquisitor Evixia Danica. Covenant is equipped with a Power Falchion, a Psi Cannon, and limited psychic powers. Next, Demon Huntress Evixia Danica. After her father, Colonel Danica, was murdered by a demon summoned by Chaos cultists who wanted revenge for the purge he enacted on them and their brethren, Evixia was trained by Inquisitor Covenant. She had her father's skull fitted with an autogun and embedded within her armor so he could serve the Emperor beyond death. She wields a power halberd made from the shards of Saint Josmain's armor. The weapon is filled with the power of the Imperial Saint and sends scores of demons screaming back into the depths of the war. Next, Inquisitor Lord Gankas Dar. Dar is one of the leaders of the Ordo Malleus in the Calixian conclave of the Calixis sector. He serves as the current proctor of the Scholariat at Arms for the Calixian Malleus. Next, Inquisitor Fadus Falconet Horst. Horst was an Inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus who played major supporting roles in the Gothic War, the First and Second War for Armageddon, and Inquisitor Katarina Greyfax's quest to find the artifact known as the Eye of Night. This device had originally assisted Abaddon the Despoiler in gaining control of the Blackstone fortresses during the Gothic War, and was sought by Greyfax after 999 M41 in an attempt to aid Primarch Robert Guilliman in learning how to seal the Great Rift created across the Imperium in the wake of the 13th Black Crusade. Horst was known to be a psyker of some power. Then, Inquisitor Jack Draco. Draco was a secret inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, active in the late 38th and early 39th millennia. He purportedly uncovered a widespread conspiracy involving numerous high-ranking members of the Inquisition known as the Ordo Hydra, as well as highly sensitive information regarding the Emperor. He proved instrumental in stopping a plot by the Ordo Hydra to psychically enslave mankind in the hope of striking a blow that would eliminate chaos from the galaxy forever. In reality, the plan very likely would have spawned a fifth Chaos God, who would have guaranteed the ultimate victory of chaos over the Imperium of Man. In the course of his mission, Draco became one of the few individuals in the galaxy to have entered the Emperor's Sanctum Imperialis to have an audience with the Emperor of Mankind since his internment in the Golden Throne at the end of the Heresy. It is also said that he was the only human to ever penetrate the fabled Black Library, their secret craft world within the webway that contains the entire race's knowledge concerning chaos, without the Eldar's consent. He was declared renegade by the Inquisition, and he was reported to have died within the webway in the early 39th millennium under mysterious circumstances. Draco was known to have a retinue consisting of a navigator, an assassin, and a squat. He was reported to be a formidable psyker. Next, Octus Enoch. Enoch is an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor of the Calixian Conclave of the Calixis sector, and a member of the Scholariat at Arms. He holds the title Prognost Pursuant, and his primary mission is to hunt down prophecies relating to future demonic incursions. Once he has found a true prophecy foretelling an incursion and has interpreted it, he dispatches a cell of acolytes to ensure that it does not come about, whatever the cost in doing so. To this end, he employs a huge household, with a mix of Imperial adepts and more militant acolytes. The adepts drawn for the Administratum and the Adeptus Mechanicus are tasked with poring through thousands upon thousands of tomes of prophecy, prognostication, and sometimes pure gibberish, and the others work in the field according to their master's instructions. The Inquisitor rarely takes to the field himself, although he has done so in the past, most notably when he bound the demon Naterus into a demon host and imprisoned it within a shuttle orbiting a dead star. Instead, he presides over his many acolyte cells, dispatching them across the entire Calixis sector to disrupt the dark prophecies identified by his adepts. Next, Inquisitor Silas Hand. Hand was at first a witch hunter serving on the Ordo Solar and the Segmentum Solar, who eliminated thousands of heretics. After being approached by an important demon hunter, Inquisitor Lord Hephaestus Grud, he was invited to join the Ordo Malleus. Hand was sent to Ophelia 7 to identify if Battle Sister Ephrael Stern was tainted by chaos. Mysteriously, she was the sole survivor out of 12,000 Imperial Guardsmen who had been sent to the planet Parnis. His investigation led to no conclusion, and Hand was forced to return with her to the planet Parnis. During the journey, their vessel's navigator was possessed by chaos and destroyed their starship, the Hammer of Thor. Escaping, both Hand and Stern were able to land upon the surface of Parnis. However, they soon confronted the demon Kurtlashi Isho Akshami. Once again, only Stern managed to survive the ensuing battle. Next, Inquisitor Jason Hunt. Jason Hunt was an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor and Warden of the Stromgarde sector. He is closely affiliated with Commander Marcus Flintlock of the Storm Dragon Space Marine chapter, and has used detachments of that force frequently in pursuit of his missions. He is also a potent high-level psyker. Next, Inquisitor Lord Barbilus. Barbilus was an Inquisitor active during the 41st millennium. A warrior first and foremost, he was the very exemplar of an Inquisitor of the Ordo Malleus, stern, reliable, devoted to his holy mission, and utterly remorseless. From the height of his war pulpit, Inquisitor Barbilus had battled countless demons, smiting them with his heavy warhammer, forged from meteoric iron and protected by golden power armor depicting demons being crushed under the Emperor's heels. Whenever Imperial citizens heard rumors of the secretive Ordo Malleus, they imagined men like Barbilus. His deeds were great and many: the purge of the Rana nobility, the destruction of the criminal empire of Kashar the Butcher, and the cleansing of Garantulan Minor count amongst his most famous deeds, as did his final death fighting the demon prince Maligrim the Blood-Stained on the agri-world of Agnarsen's Hold. It is still unknown if the venerable Inquisitor died at the hands of the demon prince or in the fires of the Exterminatus he had ordered himself, should he fail to banish the demon. but nevertheless, his martyrdom elevated him above his contemporaries. His name was inscribed on the walls of the Hall of Heroes within the Imperial Palace, and countless statues were erected in his honor, both within inquisitorial fortresses of the Segmentum Solar and without. Lately, though, his name has somehow been tainted by the actions of one of his former acolytes, Renegade Inquisitor Golik Ren Tsar Valinov. Next, Lord Inquisitor Hiram Nachona. Nachona is the last survivor of the Ordo Malleus Chamber Apollyon, formerly tasked with the scrutiny and safeguarding of the now revoked Orpheus sector. This span of the Segmentum Tempestus had always been known for its turbulent warp tides, and thus the Ordo's Chamber Apollyon had gained much experience in the fight against the denizens of the warp. Yet it would be Nachona's lack of judgment that would allow for the catastrophic Orphean War to ravage the Orpheus sector and cause its downfall. The experienced Lord Inquisitor had falsely interpreted the devastation wrought by the awakening Maynarch dynasty of the Necron as a prelude to a far greater chaotic incursion. Being a close advisor to the sector's governor, Calibron Lan, Nachona stalled every offensive gathering of Imperial forces, and did not pass on the knowledge he possessed to his colleagues in the Ordo Xenos, who might have seen the signs of their impending doom. Lord Inquisitor Nachona's ultimate fate following the Battle of Amara remains uncertain. Next, Renegade Inquisitor Quixos. Originally a devout member of the Ordo Malleus, Quixos' destiny was forever changed after he was wounded by a demon on the world of Lacan 15. Part of the abomination's claw had become lodged in Quixos' heart, and this fragment gave him a link to the warp he had never before known. He soon began investigating how he might put the powers of the warp to his own uses. Over successive centuries, he became ever more deeply caught up in occult study and the use of chaos. He bound the demon Karnagar into a sword he then took as his personal weapon, stole the Malus Codicium from the library of Othella on Zandrini Prime, created demon hosts, and built up a vast network of catspaws and puppets throughout the Inquisition and the broader Imperium. Yet, though he was arguably falling into damnation, it was in the hope of achieving a greater good, chiefly harnessing the energies of the Cardian pylons in order to close the Eye of Terror. Alas, his methods grew ever more extreme, and brought him into increasingly frequent contact and conflict with more puritanical inquisitors. In the end, his plans fell into dust when fellow Inquisitor Gregor Eisenhorn at last slew him in single combat at Farnes Beta. To date, no other has attempted to replicate his designs. Until they do, it will be impossible to say whether Quixos was motivated by genius or warp-touched insanity. Next, Hector Rex. Hector Rex is an Ordo Malleus Inquisitor and was the Lord Proctor of the Scarus Conclave of the Inquisition in the Scarus sector during the Siege of Rax. Rex is a highly regarded Imperial hero and bears the title Auditori Imperator, having been one of the few individuals that has been admitted within the Sanctum Imperialis in the presence of the God Emperor. Next, Inquisitress Bray Lygia. Initially recruited by the Ordo Hereticus from one of the many noble houses of Gathalamor, Bray Lygia was recruited into the Ordo Malleus for her unparalleled skill at decrypting and processing ancient texts. In this, she was greatly aided by her growing psychic powers as an infocide, capable of gleaning information from any document by merely touching it. A scholar and an investigator more than a warrior, Lygia would prove most valuable in the successful hunt and capture of the renegade Inquisitor Golik Ren Tsar Valinov and the identification of Valinov's true master, the greater demon Gargatuloth, the Prince of 1,000 Faces. Charged with preventing this powerful lieutenant of Tzeentch from manifesting in real space, Bray was dispatched to the Trail of Saint Evissa, an almost forgotten corner of the Segmentum Solar, to investigate several leads. What she uncovered made for a truly terrifying picture. For 10,000 standard years, Gargatuloth had been orchestrating his return. Almost every world within the Trail of Saint Evissa had been touched by him, many of his cults even masquerading as the local imperial authorities without the knowledge of the Inquisition. For reasons best left unknown, Inquisitress Bray was declared excommunicate traitoris by her fellow Inquisitors after one of her death cultists helped the renegade Golic Ren Tsar Valinov escape his rightful judgment. Arrested by the Grey Knights, she did not resist, but was deemed too corrupted by the knowledge she had gained to warrant anything less than execution. However, as would only be discovered far too late, Ligeia had not been corrupted by the powers of chaos. Her psychic powers had allowed her to learn Gargatuloth's true name, thus enabling Justica Alaric of the Grey Knights to banish the demon from the material realm for a further 1,000 standard years, and add its name to the Codicium Aeternum. Next, Inquisitor Suresia, a veteran demon hunter and long-serving member of the Scholariate of Arms. As a Xanthite Inquisitor, Suresia's radical methods have earned him the condemnation of dozens of fellow Inquisitors, especially Puritans, but so far he has avoided formal censure. This is highly successful, but also due to the governing principles of the Scholariate at Arms, which enforce an uneasy truce between peers with wildly divergent beliefs. Suresia has been instrumental in purging many widespread conspiracies and cults, and has halted several potentially devastating demonic incursions. He rarely undertakes missions alongside other Inquisitors, although he will cooperate in the early stages of an investigation if circumstances dictate. However, the final execution of any mission is always undertaken exclusively by Suresia and his followers. None outside his household have ever witnessed the methods he uses to such great effect in the banishment of the enemies of mankind. Next, Inquisitor Mordecai Toth. Toth was the Inquisitor dispatched by the Ordo Malleus to the world of Tartarus to warn the Bloodraven Space Marine chapter about the warp storm that was about to hit the planet, and to ensure that the forces of chaos operating on that doomed world were found and purged. He initially suspected the Bloodraven's force commander on Tartarus, Captain Gabriel Angelos of the 3rd Company, of being tainted by the ruiner's powers due to his stubborn refusal to flee in the face of the arrival of chaos forces from the Alpha Legion on the planet, which Toth perceived to be a symptom of Angelos becoming overly obsessed and enamored with chaos. He did not suspect the true traitor, Bloodraven's librarian Isidore Achios, until it was too late. He helped the Bloodravens purge chaos from Tartarus, and even gave Gabriel his demon hammer, God's Splitter, which had been forged from a fragment of an Eldar avatar of Cain's sword. It was with this same weapon that Captain Angelos, in an attempt to destroy the artifact of chaos found on the world called the Maledictum, unintentionally released the powerful great demon of Khorne from its prison within the object where it had been trapped following a battle with the Elder of Biel-Tan Craftworld for many millennia. During the course of the Bloodraven's campaign on Tartarus, it was discovered that Inquisitor Toth had actually been present on the planet before the initial Orc invasion that had called the Space Marines to the world. Presumably, Toth was there trying to find the Maledictum before it could fall into the hands of the Servants of Chaos. And the last one, Inquisitor Commodus Vogue. Vogue was a respected and experienced Inquisitor active in the Scaurus sector of the Segmentum Obscurus. A strict Puritan of the Thorian doctrine, he was an immensely powerful psyker and considered near unkillable by his inquisitorial brethren. Forthright and brash, he eschewed all subterfuge and deception, considering such things the tools only of radicals. Vogue mentored the Inquisitor Golesh Phepos Constantine Haldane, sponsoring his rise to the rank of full Inquisitor. Despite his membership in the Ordo Malleus, he was not considered to be strongly aligned with Inquisitor Lord Begier and Inquisitor Leonid Osma, the dominant political inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus at the time. Vogue was killed during the assault against the heretic Xanthite Quixos, having answered the call of Gregor Eisenhorn, despite Eisenhorn's status as a renegade at the time. He stood against the demon host Profaniti, proving his psychic mastery one more time in Eisenhorn's defense. After his death, he was buried at the Thorian sacristy adjoining the great cathedral of Thracian Primaris, where a small plaque commemorating his deeds remains to this day. To wrest human souls from the grip of the demon, to defeat the temptation within our own hearts and minds. There is a grace and a grandeur to the work of the Malleus and Hereticus, but the Ordo Xenos, it has no more gravitas than hacking away weeds in one's garden. By all means, pursue your grace, grandeur, and gravitas then, sir, and in your prayers tonight, ask that your temptation to those things be lifted from your weak and sinning mind, so that you might feel some humility in the presence of those who ensure your garden remains safe to parade all your fine qualities in. From an apocryphal exchange between Inquisitors Bifon and Marinus. The Ordo Xenos was created in the mid-32nd millennium, though in fact the Inquisition had been founded over 1,000 standard years earlier in the early 31st millennium at the express order of the Emperor after the great betrayal of the Horus Heresy had begun. The Inquisition was initially a relatively small, highly secretive organization comprising only a small group of skilled Imperial agents drawn from all of the Imperial Adepta and nobility, as well as select Loyalist Space Marines from both the Loyalist and Traitor Legions. They were tasked by the Emperor and chosen by Melchador the Sigillite at the end of the heresy with uncovering and destroying every threat to the Imperium of Man from both without and within, but with a special emphasis on defeating the servants of chaos. The original recruits for this newly created elite force were drawn from the survivors of the various chapters who took part in the initial invasion of the beast capital world of Ullanor Prime. These chapters suffered severe losses during the invasion, thus standing in vigil over their fallen brethren. The seeds of the Death Watch were sown. Lord Commander Corland eventually came to an agreement with the inquisitorial representative Vinand to assuage any doubts by the rest of the Senatorum Imperialis that this elite force, named the Death Watch in honor of those brethren who had died in battle on Ullanor Prime, would fall under the purview of the Inquisition, but an Astartes would ultimately serve as its chapter master. It was in the wake of the War of the Beast that the Inquisition itself was formally divided into the first two of the Ordos Majoris, the Ordo Malleus and the Ordo Xenos. The Death Watch was chosen to be an integral part of the newborn Ordo Xenos and serve as its chamber militant, the way the Grey Knights served as the chamber militant of the demon-hunting Ordo Malleus. The Ordo Xenos could also be said to have gradually evolved before its formal recognition in the wake of the War of the Beast from that group of Inquisitors who were primarily interested in investigating and studying the alien species of the Milky Way galaxy and eliminating any threat to the Imperium that these Xenos represented. The Inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos accept responsibility for protecting humanity from the predations of hostile aliens. To most of the Imperium, the alien is an abomination, a heathen who desires humanity's destruction and who must be slain for the good of mankind. Most Inquisitors share this view and pursue the alien to the point of extinction if they can. Some aliens are a threat to the Imperium in a military sense, invading large swaths of Imperial space, ransacking planets, and killing or enslaving the inhabitants. The green-skinned rampaging orcs and voracious Tyranids are chief among these large-scale threats. The Astra Militarum and Avis Imperialis are the main weapons deployed against these Xenos hordes, and the Imperium's war zones are constantly ablaze with battles against them. This Ordo is instrumental in leading the Imperium's military forces against major Xenos invasions, gathering intelligence and deploying troops. An Inquisitor in this position makes decisions that can cost millions of lives, and he or she must be prepared to go further than even the most hard-hearted Astra Militarum general or Navy admiral in stemming the alien tide. Some of the Ordos's greatest Inquisitors, such as the legendary Inquisitor Lord Fidus Cryptman, have sacrificed entire worlds to deny them to alien forces. The tactics of the Ordo's Inquisitors and their retinues vary depending on the situation and the level of alien taint revealed. Where the threat is subtle, they will use guile and stealth, wielding their power as if it was a scalpel used to cut out a growing malignant cancer. When the alien menace is great, the Inquisitor can commandeer the aid of entire regiments of the Astra Militarum, as well as having the capacity to command the Imperium's military forces. The Ordo Xenos also have access to the Ordo's chamber militant, the Death Watch Space Marines. The Death Watch is an unusual chapter that draws its members from the veteran members of other chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, with Astartes serving the Death Watch for a set period of time before returning to their original chapters. Most Space Marine chapters are a part of this ancient agreement, sending Space Marines with the most appropriate skills to be trained and equipped for a term of service as specialized alien hunters under the command of the Ordo Xenos. A kill team of Death Watch Space Marines is invaluable when an Inquisitor comes to exterminate an alien infestation, investigate a potentially deadly alien world, or eliminate a particularly loathsome Xenos creature. Some Death Watch squads are placed at the disposal of an entire inquisitorial conclave dedicated to the protection of a single Imperial sector, but most of them are appointed to the retinue of a particular Inquisitor until their mission is complete. While many Ordo Xenos Inquisitors believe that all aliens must be killed, This is not true for all of them. Some believe that if an intelligent alien species does not wish the Imperium harm and does not move against Imperial interests, then cooperating with them is not out of the question. Some aliens possess technology that far surpasses the Imperium's own, such as the elegant digital weapons made by the ape-like Jokeiro, and trading for such technology may be to the Imperium's benefit. Furthermore, the Imperium shares common enemies with some Xenos species, and alliances between Imperial and alien forces are sometimes a necessity. Some Ordo Xenos Inquisitors actively foster these alliances, believing that their superior knowledge of alien methods and mindsets negates the risks of collaborating with Xenos. These beliefs are considered radical among the Ordo Xenos, and their adherents can be shunned or even hunted down by their brother Inquisitors. Nevertheless, the contact an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor has with alien species can impart a belief that some of them can be used, not just destroyed by the Imperium. The Void is an unutterably vast and inhuman place, a place of ancient dangers and unknown perils. In this cold darkness have bred things as obscene, terrible, and dangerous as any demon of the warp. In the face of such dire knowledge, you must hold on to this single truth. It is mankind's destiny to rule the stars and rule them alone. From Lord Inquisitor Nail, a discursive primer for initiates of the Ordo Xenos, Volume 1. The primary remit of the Ordo Xenos is to defend the Imperium against the threat of the alien, a duty that goes far beyond merely confronting non-human creatures in open conflict alongside the Astra Militarum or Adeptus Astartes. In order to oppose the Xenos threat, the Ordo Xenos must undertake the dangerous task of investigating and studying intelligent alien species with a mind to destroying any that is deemed to be a threat to humanity. It must learn the nature of its inhuman foes, seek out their weaknesses, and learn how to counter their strengths. More than this, it must be ever watchful, not only against what lies in the void beyond, but against other, often more subtle and insidious threats that arise much closer to home. Such threats are often posed by renegade humans, some corrupt, others merely opportunistic. Such individuals are known to trade in alien technology or seek to hide alien species within the Imperium's midst, often for the purposes of experimentation, profit, or bloody entertainment. Many of the Ordo Xenos' operations are not focused outward but inward on the Imperium itself, and with good cause. The Ordo's records are littered with bloody atrocities and vast losses of life that have resulted where the alien has taken hold of an Imperial world via stealth, infiltration, or slow taint, as well as countless incidents where the influence of alien technology, misunderstood artifacts, and Xenos lore have resulted in unintended disaster and tragic consequence. Within the Calixis sector, the job of the Ordo Xenos is a particularly complex and difficult one. This challenge is in no small part because the sector itself lies on the very edge of the Imperium. It is a borderland flanked for much of its perimeter by the uncharted void of space beyond the Emperor's light. No complete or even meaningful control can be kept over this vast open border, and human and alien vessels can pass largely unobserved and unchallenged despite the best efforts of Battle Fleet Calixis and the Imperial listening stations. This dark horizon is crossed regularly by rogue traders, the explorator fleets of the Adeptus Mechanicus, and even by smaller independent merchant and prospecting vessels quite legitimately. Where such legal traffic ends and outlaw traffic begins is often a blurred line. Each one of these is a vector, a means by which the alien and alien influences can flow like poison to the Imperium's veins, and the eyes of the Ordo Xenos cannot be everywhere at once. Although all aliens are officially viewed as anathema by the Imperium, some are tolerated to a lesser degree. Such species tend to be primitive in technology and culture, or constrained to a backwater planet far from Imperial space. In many parts of the Imperium, contact with star-faring alien species is not uncommon, and on some frontier worlds, trading with them is a fact of life. Such dealings are usually overlooked by the authorities and would certainly not warrant censorship or intervention. Other species, however, represent such a threat to humanity that the Ordo Xenos brand them with a high Gothic stigma, the Xenos Horrificus, marking them as a high-priority target who must be hunted down and purged at every opportunity. The brand does not merely apply to the Xenos themselves, but also to any who have had dealings with them. More than one rogue trader has been branded with the mark of the Xenos Horrificus, marking him out as an enemy of the Ordo Xenos, the Death Watch, and mankind itself. When the alien threat is too great for even the requisitioned Astra Militarum or Planetary Defense Force troops of the Inquisition to handle, the Inquisitor will call on the elite Battle Brothers of the Death Watch, the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Xenos, who operate in kill teams made up of elite, veteran Astartes from all of the Space Marine chapters in the Imperium. All Death Watch members wear black power armor, except for one shoulder blade which bears the colors of their original chapter, so as not to dishonor their power armor's machine spirit, and the other is emblazoned with the unique chapter badge of the Death Watch. Certain chapters make for great Xeno hunters, like the Ultramarines with their long and infamous experience with the Tyranids during the Battle of Makridge, or the Crimson Fists with their experience against the Orcs during the Battle of Rin's World. The Ordo Xenos is well known for either being extremely ponderous in its operations or extremely quick to act. A major example of their slowness to act was when the Tau first made contact with Imperial planetary governors on the eastern fringe of the galaxy, and these aliens' advanced technology was allowed to penetrate all the way to Terra through the Imperial trade routes as their technology was brought and sold by Imperial merchants. However, At times, the Ordo Xenos can truly bring the Emperor's justice to those alien species who seek to challenge human domination of the galaxy. A prime example of which was seen during the Damocles Gulf Crusade, in which an Ordo Xenos-led Navis Imperialis battle group spearheaded an Imperial crusade deep into Tau space. Although its progression slowed to halt when they reached Dal Eth, one of the core set worlds of the Tau Empire. It is worth noting that with the arrival of Hive Fleet Behemoth in the galaxy from the intergalactic void, the forces of the Damocles Crusade were forced to withdraw from their siege of Dal Eth to attend to that first massive Tyranid invasion. The Deathwatch kill teams may specialize in defending or attacking any known alien race, including the Tau, Tyranids, Necrons, Orcs, or even Eldari. It depends upon the experience of the team. A kill team can be composed of groups of 5, 10, or even 20 Astartes in rare cases, depending on the size and scope of the alien problem. In extreme circumstances, they will operate alongside other armies of the Imperium, including Astra Militarum regiments under inquisitorial control, or even elements of other Space Marine chapters that have responded to the Inquisition's request for assistance. When a battle brother leaves the Death Watch after his term of service to return to his original chapter, he gains the honor of keeping the Death Watch's silver badge on his power armor's left shoulder blade. Here is a full list of the most notable Ordo Xenos Inquisitors, starting off with Inquisitor Al-Subai. Al-Subai was recently elevated to Inquisitor status after serving as an interrogator in the service of Inquisitor Van Voigens. While Van Voigens combs the very edge of Imperial space for alien civilizations, Al-Subai's role is to search for alien influence in the populated worlds of the sector. Probably the youngest Inquisitor in the Cabal, Al-Subai is deeply pious and he looks it, usually attending gatherings in a monastic habit, worn over sturdy, practical carapace armor. He believes that everything in the galaxy is connected, and that the various alien species and their depredations are part of a larger web of hostility generated by the galaxy. To him, aliens, as well as all creatures of the warp, are symptoms of the galaxy's enmity towards mankind. He therefore advocates the destruction of all aliens, especially those who influence humans. He considers his remit to cover not only alien-influenced cults and corruption, but also the trafficking in alien creatures and their technology. Anyone dealing with aliens or their artifacts is an enemy of humanity, and nothing gives Al-Subai greater satisfaction than to hunt them down and subject them to whatever punishment the Cabal decrees. To him, the Propheticum Hereticus Tenebrae is the handiwork of alien manipulation. Next we have Inquisitor Vils Andarian. Andarian is one of several Ordo Xenos luminaries drawn to watch Fortress Eriok in the Jericho Reach since the Jericho Maw Warp Gate opened. His primary interest is in the gate itself, but the dangers in the Well of Night have driven him to Eriok to pursue his investigations. Here he can at least study data gathered about the Warp Gate in its dormant state throughout the Age of Shadows. He keeps a substantial retinue of adepts, savants, and servitors at the Tower of Brass, for this very purpose. They work night and day, seeking after some elusive piece of data Andarian apparently needs. He has also expressed a keen interest in Xenos legends throughout the Jericho Reach. The older and more obscure, the better. He has made several expeditions to the planets Jovi's Descent and Karlak, following in the footsteps of Inquisitor Vincent. His interest in the local myths of a city beneath the sea brought him to Karlak prior to Vincent's disappearance, and the two cooperated in the investigation for a time. Andarian has resolved not to let the matter of Vincent's disappearance drop until Vincent, or more likely his slayer, is found. Next, Inquisitor Staven Arcturos. Arcturos is one of the alien species of scholars of the Xeno Hybris faction, serving with the Inquisition's Calixis conclave. He was initially drawn to the Calixis sector during his lifelong study of the Eldar and their influence in the Segmentum Obscurus. For decades, he tracked down any trace of this enigmatic alien culture, ranging all the way out to the Gothic sector and back. He uncovered tantalizing hints and rumors, but rarely anything solid. His first true breakthrough occurred after a battle with an unidentified Xenos vessel in the Hazaroth Abyss sub-sector. The Inquisitor's ship was crippled, helpless before the enemy craft's weapons, but he was rescued by the timely intervention of an Eldar cruiser. This ship belonged to none other than Ulthir Elarian, an infamous Eldar corsair who prowled the space lanes of the Calixis sector. It is rumored that Arcturos learned great knowledge from a seer aboard Elarian's ship. What happened later is shrouded in mystery. Some claim that he became a guest of an Eldar craft world, whilst others say he roamed distant stars, transported by alien witchery. Whatever the truth, upon his return he was a deeply changed man. He swiftly became one of the Xenos Hybris' faction's most fervent members, and he is reputed to have a number of aliens amongst his retinue. Those who have spoken to him report that he is now obsessed with the Eldar's means of viewing the future through a series of psychically active rune stones, and that he constantly practices this vile form of divination, basing every act on what he sees in the patterns of the stones. Next we have Inquisitor Ark Ashton. According to apocryphal tales, this legendary Ordo Xenos Inquisitor was the first commissioner of a specialized Cadence Prometheum destroyer incineration device, crafted by the artisan masters of the world of Cadence. The destroyer is a highly advanced pattern of hand flamer that uses force compression technology, similar to that of a plasma weapon, to create a superheated thermal incandescent blast that burns far hotter and with greater fuel efficiency than that of a usual flamer. Next, Inquisitor Horosa Barnabas. The tales of this Inquisitor date back 4 centuries, and none of them reflect on him in any great credit. The current generations of servants in the Tower of Brass, for example, are mainly descended from his prisoners, trapped in bureaucratic limbo once they were exonerated by evidence uncovered after his death. A trail of lost artifacts and botched missions followed his retinue that was so dismal and persistent that some suspected a cunningly hidden secret agenda was being played out. If so, it was being done beneath the very noses of the Ordo Xenos, and surely with the collusion of many of their most highly placed members. The majority of Barnabas's contributions to the Ordos' knowledge are now sealed away inside quarantine zones in the catacombs, allegedly too dangerous and toxic to approach. Inquisitor Barnabas was always fond of bold gestures and cut an impressive figure to the masses, very much fulfilling the commonest conceptions of what an Inquisitor should be. His sweeping pogroms were always a terror among the noble classes, and that gave him a good deal of popularity with the workers. Unfortunately, his billowing cloak and impressive armor failed to impress the Eldar in a skirmish on Andronicus, and he met his demise there on the end of an Asuriani fire lance. Next, Inquisitor Hezekiah Carmillus of the Ordo Xenos has served the Inquisition for over 3 standard centuries. In that time, she has led pogroms that have scoured Xenos infestations from a dozen worlds, condemned and executed Lord Commanders and Admirals, broken influential and traitorous rogue traders, and denounced radicalism amongst her own kind. Tall and blade thin, she wears exoskeletal enhanced armor at all times and keeps a court of diverse and deadly warriors collected from dozens of worlds at her beck and call. Her voice is silk and honey at one moment and unyielding steel the next as she desires. She will not, under any circumstances, allow herself to be perceived as anything other than what she is, a warrior savant in the service of the Emperor of mankind. She is undaunted by the superhuman killers whose company her duty now bids her keep, and she will brook no challenges to her authority. In particular by other Inquisitors, although she is ever conscious of its limitations. Inquisitor Carmillus has been the Inquisitor of the Chamber and Mistress of the Tower of Brass of Watch Fortress Eriok in the Jericho Reach for 16 Terran years, and has executed her sworn task with precise dedication and utter ruthlessness. While possessing a warlike temperament, she is also highly intelligent and subtle. These traits make her an ideal emissary of the Inquisition to the domain of the Death Watch, and well equipped to deal with its Adeptus Astartes masters. She has voiced the opinion in the chamber that, although she's in favor of the Great Crusade, a contingency plan should be drawn up to destroy the Warp Gate should the Crusade suffer catastrophic failure. She believes that the Warp Gate possesses a vast threat if it is no longer under the Imperium's direct control. Many of her other motivations, however, remain a tightly held secret. Next, we have, of course, one of its most famous Inquisitors, Gregor Eisenhorn. An Amalathian member of the Ordo Xenos, Eisenhorn was the infamous Inquisitor who orchestrated the downfall of Quixos the Bright and Pontius Glor, using a stolen demon host named Cherubale, a former tool of Quixos. He seemingly vanished soon after the downfall of Pontius, having been declared a heretic by Inquisitor Osmar of the Ordo Malleus, and this bad reputation stayed with him despite attempts to clear his name by other Ordo Xenos members. A man of near terrifying willpower and ferocious intellect, Eisenhorn has since, along with his former pupil Gideon Ravenor, battled the malignant chaos cult known as the Divine Frattery. Next, Inquisitor Ezu Grail. Only one thing brought Inquisitor Ezu Grail to the Jericho Reach: Tyranids. She sees the Tyranids as the biggest single threat facing the Imperium today, and its matter she will expound on at great length, given any opportunity. She has based herself at Watch Fortress Eriok for the express purpose of lobbying for more action on the Orpheus salient, and her clashes with the resident Inquisitor of the Chamber have been loud and public. As a result, she has chosen to take suites far removed from the Tower of Brass and directly over the Bestiatrium, distilling her bile and vitriol and lengthy reports to the Chamber of Vigilance. She has a sympathetic ear from members of the Death Watch, as they fully appreciate the exponential threat a hive fleet can become with access to enough biomass. However, it's been a harder job convincing officers of the Crusade and her fellow Inquisitors of the need to divert all reinforcements coming through the Warp Gate to the Orpheus salient. She clings to hopes that the Omega Vault will open to reveal some weapon to stop the Tyranids, not just within the Jericho Reach, but across the entire galaxy. Next, Lord Parnival Grundwald. Grundwald is a notable Puritan Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos, who faithfully served the Imperium for over 200 Terran years. He was an accomplished expert in the field of xenology. One of his most notable actions was the discovery and subsequent persecution of the deadly Xenos known as the Lacrimol. Grunwald created a conclave, the Conclave Conservati, and appealed to his fellow Inquisitors on the deadly menace the Lacrimol posed to the Imperium. He soon earned the title of the Xenos Scourge of Helshin for his successful persecution of these foul creatures. Next, Thaddeus Hack. Thaddeus is an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos and a veteran of almost a century of service to the Imperium. Very little of his early career is known to his peers, as he came to the Calixis sector already in possession of the Inquisitorial Rosette. Soon after joining the ranks of the Ordos Calixis, he became embroiled in the machinations of the Ocularians, a radical faction of the Inquisition obsessed with divining the future and thereby learning what enemies must be faced before they become too powerful to defeat. For over a decade, he moved amongst the unseen and silent courts of the Ocularians, mastering many of the arts of divination and uncovering many dire threats to the future of the sector. One such divination took him beyond the Calixis sector, through the Maw and into the far reaches of the Coronus Expanse. In a cold tomb on a dead, windswept planet on the verge of the Agarian Dominion, Thaddeus faced the phantom of a long-dead race. In so doing, he defeated his foe and undoubtedly saved many lives. But he was changed, his powers of divination gone, torn from him at the climax of that dread combat. He wandered the expanse for several years, descending into a madness born of his inability to see into the future. He could not return to his fellow Ocularians or to the Calixis sector, and so he fell amongst the lowest of the low, the so-called footfallen of the Coronus Expanse. Some say that he forgot that he was an Inquisitor for a time, or else was conducting such secret missions that his filthy, ragged countenance and the black light of insanity shining from his eyes was a highly convincing charade. Whatever the truth, he strayed into places few have ever returned from, and came back possessed of dark knowledge gleaned from carvings predating the birth of humanity itself. Next, Inquisitor Calistradi. Calistradi was an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos and a specialist in gene-stealer infestations. After months of investigation on the world of Avalos, she tracked the source of an infestation from its origins out in the great southern farmlands and into Lord's Holm. Initially, she believed that the Lord Governor Thorsholt was complicit in the spread of the infestation. However, she later came to realize he was merely incompetent. What she didn't know was that ever since she set foot upon Avalos, she had been watched by the Brood Lord and his minions, and when her path finally led her to Lord's Home, The ancient Gene Stealer chose to act, igniting an uprising and plunging the city into chaos. The Inquisitor dispatched some of her team to deal with the uprising, while she took the rest and sought out the Brood Lord, fearing aid from the Death Watch would not arrive before the city fell. Unfortunately for her, she did not survive her encounter with the Brood Lord and his children. Next, Lord Quaitmaz Nail. Nail was a former member of the Calixian Conclave, who in the aftermath of his expeditions into the Hazaroth Abyss sub-sector, penned the infamous Calixian Black Grimoire, which takes the shape of a small black data slate made of high-impact polyflex that opens in the fashion of a classed book and also has a short-range audio and picked recording and playback function. The grimoire was substantially added to a century later by the infamous Inquisitor Kol Shek. The Black Grimoire is no less than a field manual detailing many forms of Xenos creatures they had encountered in their long years of service, explaining how to identify, combat, and destroy them. The very existence of the grimoire is a point of contention among the Inquisitors of the Calixian Conclave, as most in the Ordo Malleus feel that such information should never leave the heavily guarded libraries of the Ordos, while more Puritan factions of the Ordo Hereticus claim that the work is far too dangerous to be allowed to exist at all, and all copies should be hunted down and purged. Next, Lord Cryptman. Well versed through hard experience and knowledge of the Tyranids and their infestation techniques, Inquisitor Cryptman was responsible for first identifying the Genestealer infestation preceding High Fleet Leviathan. He later authorized the largest single act of genocide the Imperium has ever inflicted on itself by abandoning or destroying all worlds in High Fleet Leviathan's path. For his actions, he was issued a carta extremis and was stripped of his title and position in the Inquisition. However, this did not stop him, and he soon led his loyal Death Watch Astartes to capture live Genestealers, place them in stasis, and use them to lure the High Fleet into the worlds controlled by the Orcs of Octavius, slowing down the High Fleet's progress towards Terra, while it sought to digest that massive Orc empire. Next, Solomon Locke. Solomon Locke was an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos and a veteran of the Hrud infestation of Chinkar, who was tasked with investigating the sudden loss of contact from an Imperial research facility on the world of Beta Anphelion 4 in 850 M41. Locke, the Elysian Drop Troops 99th D Detachment, a force drawn from the 226th Cadian Shock Troops Regiment, and Adeptus Mechanicus Biologis Exploritas Force, headed by Magos Biologis Arthon, and a task force of Red Scorpion Space Marines, went into orbit above the clouded and hostile moon. The Imperial task force soon learned the horrible truth. The Mechanicus tech priests on Beta Anphelion 4 had been conducting biological research upon captured subspecies of Tyranids. Their containment of these savage Xenos had ultimately failed, and the Tyranids had escaped into the wild, rapidly increased their numbers, and then wiped out the small population of the Imperial research station. Solomon Locke's task force now faced a similar, overwhelming population of Tyranids. The Red Scorpions received orders to withdraw from the hopeless situation, but they refused to take any of the other Imperial survivors on their transports. In a last stand, Locke succeeded in slaying a Hierophant Bio-Titan, only to see two more stride out of the ammonia fog of Beta Anphelion. Locke was able to transmit a record of his last days from Beta Anphelion 4 to his fellow Inquisitor in the Ordo Xenos, and his final fate is unknown, though he is presumed dead. Next, Jenna Orekiel. Jenna Orekiel has been in the Inquisition service for many solar decades, first as an acolyte to the famed Ordo Xenos Inquisitor Dargasto, and on his death, as an Inquisitor in her own right. Upon inheritance of Dargasto's position, she gained not only a Master's Inquisitorial seal and followers, but also a mission of the utmost importance, to prevent a second dawn for the ancient star gods known as the Catan. Orekiel is fascinated by alien species and technology, much to the distaste of many of her inquisitorial colleagues. Her blatant use of Xenos weapons and technology has been frowned upon by the more conservative members of the Ordo, as has her use of aliens in her retinue. Rumors state she has, on occasion, cavorted with the enigmatic craft-world Eldari, even to the point of having one in her service. Nevertheless, her record speaks for itself, and none can deny that she prosecutes the Inquisition's war against the demon, the alien, and the heretic with consuming fervor. Next, Inquisitor Auriel. Auriel was an Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos who foolishly sought to protect the Typhon sector from the assault of an approaching Tyranid high fleet by releasing, as part of an ill-advised defense study, a gene stealer into the fortress city of Coritanorum on the world of Typhus Prime, which was the headquarters of the Typhos Supreme Guard, the planetary defense force for the world. The gene stealer quickly infected the officers of the Typhos Supreme Guard with its DNA, making them part of its brood mind, and the result was that the planetary defense force rebelled against the Imperium and the planetary authorities, initiating a civil war that would last for more than 2 standard years. While the local Adeptus Arbites did everything in its power to clamp down on the rebellion by increasing control over other cities on the world, they were unable to root out the true cause of the Supreme Guard's betrayal, and eventually fell under the command of the local commissariat. An Astra Militarum force comprised of regiments of the Mordian Iron Guard was ultimately sent to put down the rebellion. Much of the world came under siege. Eventually, acquainted with Colonel Schaefer, Auriel called upon the forces of the 13th Penal Legion, the Last Chances, to aid him in destroying the heart of the rebellion with a surgical strike at Coritanorum to end the siege. The Last Chances succeeded in penetrating the fortress and disabling its plasma reactor coolant systems to initiate a massive explosion. But in the course of the intervention, the Last Chances discovered that it was Auriel who was actually responsible for the start of the rebellion. As the Last Chances boarded a commandeered shuttle to escape the blast, they prevented her from boarding, and the Inquisitor presumably died in the massive plasma blast that destroyed Coritanorum. Next, Inquisitor Natius Osrin. A former student of Inquisitor Van Huygens, the man now known as Natius Osrin began as a trusted and diligent acolyte. Osrin was chosen for his quick wits and aggressive nature from among the lower hive scum of Solomon, and over time proved his worth to Inquisitor Van Huygens many times during a career that spanned 5 decades of service. Eventually, Osrin was promoted to the rank of interrogator and thence to a full Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos. However, not long after his ascension, his interests shifted, focusing more and more upon sorcery and the arcane. In time, his allegiance shifted away from his mentor and his Ordo, and eventually he disappeared, claiming special circumstances. The Calixis Conclave in the Tricorn Palace on the sector capital world of Scintilla received several reports indicating glimpses of the enigmatic Inquisitor Osrin, including several that claimed he had been seen assisting Space Marines of the Relictors chapter. Other reports indicate that Osrin wandered far into the reaches of the Segmentum Obscurus, all the way out to Belial IV, and back before he reappeared in the Calixis sector in 803 M41. His return caused a stir in the Tricorn, for he bore with him ancient Terminator armor of unknown origin and a sword that was unmistakably a demon weapon. Refusing to account for his actions, Osrin avoided a summons from the Tricorn and struck out alone into the Halo stars. Some say he has gathered around him a group of unusual acolytes, mutants, aliens, rogue psycho-witches, and even a demon host of incredible power. What he intends to do with such an assorted retinue is still a matter of conjecture. Next, Inquisitor Adriel Quist. Adriel Quist was first noted by Inquisitor Carmillus for her prodigious telepathic abilities. Her sharp, investigative mind distinguished her from her fellow acolytes, and during her time as an interrogator, she was one of a select few brought to the Tower of Brass when her mistress became Inquisitor of the Chamber at Watch Fortress Eriog. 5 short years ago, Quist earned her rosette and remains Carmillus's primary hand in the field. She has a deep fascination with alien technology that she keeps tightly concealed. She is all too aware that many around her would brand her a radical or traitor for her desire to see the Imperium match the technological advancement of races like the Tau. She is secretly one of the Crucible Resolviate's principal sources of Xenos artifacts. The fresh Inquisitor would like greatly to find Deathwatch warriors who share her open mind about the path to humanity's advancement, as it would make procuring items of advanced alien technology from their missions far less laborious. Next, Gideon Ravenor. Once a handsome and lean man, Ravenor was crippled on Thracian Primaris and is now little more than a lump of crippled flesh living inside a heavily armored casing that serves as a grav chair. In his crippled form, however, his psychic abilities have strengthened, and with the help of psi boosters attached to his grav chair, he has become a much more powerful psyker in the high delta, low gamma range. He once served with Inquisitor Eisenhorn. However, since Eisenhorn's disappearance, Ravenor has taken charge of his old retinue of acolytes and throne agents to seek out and destroy all alien threats to the Imperium. Next, Inquisitor Reynard. Reynard discovered a cult of worshipping aliens on Mandal 4. Using a Deathwatch kill team, he attempted to destroy it, which proved to have taken over most of the capital city. After escaping, he returned with over 500,000 Imperial Guard troops and eradicated all in the city. Next, Inquisitor Helena Valeria. Helena Valeria has always believed that the work of the Ordo Xenos and the wider Inquisition should be guided by the spirit and intent of the law, to use the weapons of the enemy against the enemy. This she considers true no matter the source, and can require using warp-tainted weapons against demons, or Xenos archaeotech against hostile alien races. For Valeria, there are no lines that cannot be crossed, no edict that cannot be transgressed. The Emperor bade the Inquisition defend mankind from both its own destiny and a hostile galaxy, a task so important that Valeria demands that no methodology, however extreme, should be considered forbidden. In pursuit of this goal, she became a collector of the archaic and arcane, of bibelots and fragments of technological lore, of ancient and alien technologies to be pressed into fresh use. She has spent many decades exploring the ruins of far-flung worlds, poring over age-crumbled documents in races that Samithian libraries. A heretic may see the truth and seek redemption. He may be forgiven his past and be absolved in death. A traitor can never be forgiven. A traitor can never find peace in this world or the next. There is nothing as wretched or as hated in all the world as a traitor. The Ordo Hereticus was founded much later in the Imperium and the Inquisition's history than the Ordo Xenos and the Ordo Malleus, which can both trace their origins back to an order given by the Emperor of Mankind to Malcador the Sigillite at the start of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium. The Ordo Hereticus was created after the Age of Apostasy, which occurred during the 2nd century of the 36th millennium. The apostasy and the many heresies that took root during the anarchy of the Reign of Blood had severely destabilized the Imperium's political structure in a way not seen since the Horus Heresy millennia earlier. For the first few standard millennia of its existence, the Ordo Hereticus was but a rumor even to other inquisitors, so fanatically was its secrecy guarded. All this came to an end following the Age of Apostasy, when it was decided that the Ordo would serve better by casting an intimidating shadow, rather than existing as a myth too easily ignored. As the ecclesiarchy flourished, so too did the Ordo Hereticus grow with it. For nothing piques an inquisitor's suspicion more readily than a holy man claiming to speak with the Emperor's voice. Often, its agents pose as servants of the ecclesiarchy, feigning subservience to a cardinal's will until they have sufficient proof of the cleric's guilt. It is a rare priest with whom a member of the Ordo Hereticus cannot find fault. The Order was specifically formed to act as a check upon the power of the ecclesiarchy, ensuring that another man like the High Lord Gauj Vandar could not gain the level of power and control over the Imperium's massive governmental machinery that he did when he nearly usurped the Emperor's own rule and that of his surrogates among the Senatorum Imperialis by becoming both the Master of the Adeptus Administratum and the Ecclesiarch of the Adeptus Ministorum at the same time. Although the ecclesiarchy has its own internal regulatory bodies, it is still the role of the Inquisition to monitor all of the state organs of the Imperium. The ecclesiarchy must be particularly guarded, however, because of the extraordinary role that the faith of the Imperial Creed has come to play in the daily lives of the Imperium's people since the end of the Horus Heresy 10,000 standard years ago. Nothing can move the men and women of the Imperium like the power of their faith in the Emperor of Mankind. And there are many corrupt individuals like Gauj Vandar who would try and exploit this reality for their own selfish gain. Even worse are those who would pervert these honest expressions of faith into something darker and heretical, such as the creation of a new chaos cult that ultimately drives a planetary rebellion against the rule of the Emperor. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor is met with as much trepidation as awe, since none know where their gimlet gaze may land, and upon whom their suspicions might fall. In addition to monitoring the ecclesiarchy, ensuring that wars of faith do not exceed their mandate, or that its many cardinals do not amass more power than is deemed appropriate. The Ordo Hereticus keeps a close eye on many other imperial organizations: the Adeptus Arbites, the Adeptus Astartes, the Adepta Sororitas, and also fellow members of the Inquisition. They monitor doctrinal and physical purity, and no one is beyond their jurisdiction. It is a brave man or woman who crosses the path of a witch hunter, as simply by opposing a member of the Ordo Hereticus, an individual may be damned and declared heretic and extremis diabolus. Burn them all. The Emperor will know his own. From Joachim Kais, at the Judgment on Xenos Prime. Although primarily concerned with monitoring the ecclesiarchy to prevent its clerics from subverting the Imperium's delicate political balance between all the different loci of imperial power, the Ordo Hereticus has expanded its jurisdiction to encompass the other threats to the Imperium of Man from within: witches, mutants, heretics, traitors, and other human deviants who would threaten the lives, or even worse, the souls of the Emperor's subjects. Hereticus Inquisitors are the most feared members of the Inquisition, as their focus is on mankind itself, and they are pitiless towards those they deem to have failed the Emperor or broken his trust. And under the fierce and unflinching gaze of Hereticus Inquisitor, there are few now alive who have not failed the Master of Mankind in some way in either word or deed. The arrival of an Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor on a world is met with fear and awe, as no one but the Inquisitor himself knows where or upon whom their attentions will fall. However, many witch hunters, for all the awe and terror they deliberately inspire, know the value of secrecy and stealth in the execution of their duties. The Ordo employs a myriad of agents, investigators, informants, scholars, and infiltrators as acolytes for this purpose. The reasons for such tactics are simple. For a heresy to be purged, it must first be uncovered. The Ordo Hereticus can match the most labyrinthine plotters and secretive cults with dark machinations of their own, as many unsuspecting traitors and heretics have learned. Although the Order is extreme in its methods and utterly unforgiving in its persecutions, it has every cause and right to be so. The Imperium, though vast and seemingly invulnerable, faces the ever-present danger of a slow death by rot from within. This rot must be discovered and cut out. The eternal war of the Ordo Hereticus is one with no bystanders and no innocence. It is a war waged without pity or relent, not just to defend the status quo or enforce the Imperium's rule, but because the body and the soul of humanity itself is at stake. Their members monitor the wars of faith inspired and commanded by the ecclesiarchy to ensure they remain within the objectives assigned by the ecclesiarch and the other high lords of Terra. They ensure that the teachings preached by priests of the imperial cult remain true to the spirit of the Emperor's will. They regulate the wealth and stellar territory claimed by the higher-ranking members of the ecclesiarchy to prevent the princes of that institution its bishops and cardinals from gaining more temporal power than is appropriate, not wishing to see a repeat of the Reign of Blood. The Ordo Hereticus is also called upon to monitor other Imperial organizations for internal threats, including the Adeptus Arbites, the Space Marines, and even the other Ordo Majoris and Minoris of the Inquisition itself. Only the Emperor is beyond their jurisdiction or their suspicion, though attempts to root out perceived threats in the other Ordos of the Inquisition can be a difficult task at best. Now, what defines heresy? True heresy, as it concerns the Ordo Hereticus, is crudely defined as adhering to, promulgating, or acting on a theological or political doctrine contrary to the orthodoxy of the Adeptus Ministerum's Imperial Creed or the Lex Imperialis, which is itself considered of divine impute, being based upon the word and gift of the God Emperor. In practical terms, the crime of heresy covers a multitude of sins ranging from the denial of the Emperor's divinity and direct rebellion against the rule and rights of the Adeptus Terra to all manner of blasphemies and irreligious practice. In broader use, heresy, as expounded from the pulpit by imperial confessors, is coined as a pejorative term to define any crime, sin, or deviancy of thought that the Imperium's moral guardians find objectionable. However, the Imperium is a truly vast place, with countless variations of culture and doctrine, not all of which fit together comfortably. The extent of the fervor with which heresy in this sense is treated, and just what is considered heretical by the fanatics and extremists of a given world over another, can vary enormously. The fundamental nature of what it is to be human is under constant threat by the mutant and the psyche, corrupted in flesh. To the Ordo Hereticus, the mutant represents deviation from the physical norm and the potential taint of chaos. With mutation, it is commonly believed that spiritual corruption and depravity often follows as naturally as carrion draws vermin. Under the Lex Imperialis and the pronouncements of the Adeptus Ministerum's Imperial Creed, to be a mutant is to be removed from humanity. It is to be accursed and become the enemy simply by virtue of existing. Many mutants who are more rightly classed as abhuman because their bodies have been deformed by generations of industrial pollution or exposure to alien biospheres and are thus utterly blameless of warp taint, are still rendered suspect and are often the victims of the Zealot's wrath. However, more measured and reasoning factions within the Ordo Hereticus do see and make the distinction, preferring not to waste their time rounding up a few chemdregs when real chaos-corrupted deviants may be hiding behind a wealthy facade. These elements favor a pragmatic approach of brutal enforcement and vigilance. Others of a more Puritan mind favor the simpler solution of simply destroying them all, just to be safe. This latter course of action meets stiff resistance, and can make such inquisitors powerful enemies on worlds whose entire economies rely on an underclass of abhuman labor to survive and prosper. On the whole, and for the good of the wider Imperium, the pragmatist's approach of the control and repression of mutants usually wins out. However, when warp taint or rebellion rears its head, the the powers of the Holy Ordos let slip the Emperor's hounds, and whole worlds may be heaped high with pyres as a result. The Witch, by comparison, poses a danger far greater than any other traitor or heretic, embodying a constant threat to the souls and lives of all those around them. Not only are such individuals potential avenues by which the horrors of the war may be unleashed on the unsuspecting mass of humanity, but their unrestrained and often untrained psychic powers make each and every one of them a potential planetary-level cataclysm waiting to happen. Each is capable of crimes and atrocities, by accident or design, unimaginable to the average citizen, from causing spontaneous fires and waves of nightmares, to the willful enslavement of others as living puppets, and the slaughter of innocents by no more than a stray thought. The persecution of the witch and the unsanctioned psyker is the central goal of many within the Ordo Hereticus, and it is a dangerous task indeed. It calls for the utmost guile, ruthlessness, and savvy, for few prey are more dangerous. Although the central tasks of the Ordo Hereticus are widely known, there are other, rarer kinds of crimes that also concern them. The veneration of false gods and forbidden laws that harken back to the sins of humanity's ancient past merit the direst enmity of the Ordo. Some are crimes so prescribed that even to know of them is enough to warrant summary execution. Others, such as the worship of the false godhead known as progress and the pursuit of technologies and sciences prescribed since the time when the Emperor walked among his people, are treated with the same scorn and hatred as any mutant cult. The Ordo's involvement in such matters has brought it to conflict in the past with other powerful groups, such as the Adeptus Mechanicus and their counterparts among the Ordo Xenos, who might dispute both its involvement and its methods. The signs of heresy and corruption surround us. We need but open our eyes and allow the Emperor to guide our sight. From Preacher Cartian Dane. It is the Emperor-given duty of all Inquisitors, throne agents, and acolytes to root out the enemies of mankind wherever they hide, and to purge these threats. However, perhaps for no other Ordo is the process of examination so important as for the Ordo Hereticus. Whereas the Xenos attacks in great hordes or invades from massive troop ships, and the Daemon descends upon the worlds of the Imperium through breaches in the very fabric of existence, the heretic, psyker, traitor, and even mutant so often lurk unseen amongst the innumerable masses of humanity. In order to distinguish these enemies and find them amongst the masses of pious citizens, the servants and members of the Ordo Hereticus must hone their skills as detectives and investigators until identifying clues and following leads to heretical activity is all but second nature. Physical clues are often vital to a hereticus witch hunter's work. Potential heretics are everywhere, but acolytes have not the time to question every worker who misses a shift or every noble who idles their time in illicit pursuits. Inquisitors and their retinues must constrict their attentions to only those heresies that truly threaten humanity, and the presence of physical evidence can be invaluable in narrowing their focus. The remnants of dark rituals, pendants, and markings showing allegiance and myriad other clues can identify the presence of a threat. The next clue they look for is the heresy of deed. Many acts are heretical in themselves or serve as signs of heresy. Although acolytes must often work from the scene of a crime in order to identify and pursue the heretics responsible, with the Emperor's guidance, they sometimes are fortunate enough to directly observe a heresy in action. This might come about because the acolytes are operating undercover or unseen, allowing them to observe a heretic's crimes unbeknownst to them. At the other end of the spectrum, directly confronting a suspect with their suspicions or merely announcing their identities might drive the heretic to act rashly and flee or attack the acolytes. Both great crimes in themselves, as well as indicators of guilt in previous matters. Next, they look for the heresy of form. It is well known that physical mutation is often a sign of spiritual corruption by chaos. Although communities of mutants are tolerated on some Imperial worlds as an underclass, in most places, a mutation is a clear indicator of greater heresy. Even in locations where mutants are suffered to live, the presence of a mutant outside of strictly isolated areas might indicate rebellion or some other heresy is afoot. Of course, mutants who are able to conceal their mutations are certain to do so. Additionally, cult members sometimes intentionally mark their dark allegiances on their flesh through ritual scarring, branding, or electus. Although a powerful clue, the use of such marks can also be a liability to acolytes attempting to infiltrate a cult, who might face the choice of accepting such marks or revealing their true loyalties. Next, the heresy of craft. Many heretics take a perverse pride in their treachery, creating blasphemous items to either celebrate their heresies or corrupt others. These vary greatly. While some are obvious works of heresy, others are more subtle, such as paintings laced with fine iconography. The works of heretics come in countless forms: weapons incorporating Xenos technology, tomes of blasphemous lore, philosophical treatises questioning the divine right of mankind to rule the galaxy, ritual masks depicting alien gods, talismans of profane symbol. These are just some of the examples. Heretics might create such items personally, or might purchase or inherit them, and many could be countless Terran millennia old. Next, the informational clues. Although not as reliable as physical clues, acolytes must often rely on informational clues. This might be because the heretics have taken pains to hide or destroy the evidence of their crimes, or because the nature of the heresy is such that it leaves no physical evidence, at least not until it is too late. Then, the heresy of thought. Knowledge is power, and heretical ideas are just as dangerous and damaging as physical acts. The acolytes might discover heresy of thought by covertly monitoring a suspect, or earning a heretic's trust to the point that they reveal their true beliefs. For those witch hunters who employ the gifts of psykers, telepathy provides an avenue to discover heretical thoughts when the perpetrator is wise enough to avoid giving voice to their blasphemies. Whether an individual intends to act on their heretical thoughts is irrelevant. Giving voice to such ideas spreads the seeds of heresy to others, which is a great crime in itself. In the eyes of some Puritan inquisitors, even holding such thoughts is a crime against humanity, for such an individual might later make the transition from speculation to action, or might decide to share their dangerous ideas. Ideas hold great power, and the mere thought of the most dangerous ones marks one as a heretic just as surely as any act. Then, the heresy of tolerance. In some cases, the knowledge of an ongoing heresy and failure to act on the information is truly a heresy in itself. Someone who knowingly harbors rogue psykers, sells weapons to rebels, allows friends or family to join a heretical cult, or otherwise tolerates actions that threaten mankind, even in a small way, are surely heretics themselves, for by their inaction they give strength to the enemies of mankind. Next, the accusation of heresy. The Adeptus Terra and the governments of many worlds constantly remind citizens to report heresy whenever possible, lest they become guilty of heresy of tolerance. Many citizens, whether out of fear or duty, report minor or imagined infractions that, while worthy of the attentions of local authorities, are not the concern of acolytes. However, rarely, a dutiful citizen reports the presence of a truly grave heresy. In some cases, the citizen might simply be suspicious of a neighbor, for even if the informant does not understand the nature of their neighbor's crime, and it is good they do not, the acolyte's efforts can reveal the truth. In some cases, an accuser might even be able to furnish additional evidence, or lead the acolytes to clues. And of course, next up we have the correlational clues. Now these clues often propel an investigation forward. They arise from other kinds of clues, allowing the acolytes to make sense of seemingly random acts, insane writings, and illogical ideas. In the work of the Hereticus, correlational clues might take the form of a revelation that a series of seemingly unrelated murders is actually the work of a cult dedicated to the blood god, or that failures amongst the hive city's vital systems are due to intentional sabotage. As an investigation develops and acolytes amass clues, patterns often emerge. These can sometimes be mundane and logical, such as narrowing down the location of a heretic by examining where their crimes occur. However, patterns also arise that can even border on the supernatural. Inexplicable occurrences such as unidentifiable smells that linger in the wake of a cult's members, or nightmares disturbing the sleep of hivers at regular intervals, can identify the presence of heretical activity. Such incidents might seem to be random occurrences at first, their significance only becoming apparent as an investigation develops and the acolytes learn of additional incidences. As they identify such patterns, they might reveal the location of the heretics, the nature of them, or even their plans. With the Emperor's guidance, such leads allow the acolytes to find the culprits and halt their designs. Next, ciphers and hidden messages. Heretics, by their nature, often operate discreetly. Sharing their blasphemous ideals openly would quickly bring down the wrath of the local planetarian forces, the Ecclesiarchy, or even the Inquisition. To protect themselves and facilitate safe communication, cults, secret societies, traitors, and groups dedicated to protecting mutants or rogue psykers often develop codes and secret signs. To reveal the presence of these heretics, acolytes must be able to at least identify ciphers as such, even if they are unable to decrypt them. They might notice repeated symbols associated with heretics, even things as subtle as a feather of a certain color tucked somewhere in their clothes, a particular hand signal, or a seemingly innocuous phrase. Although a single occurrence of such a sign is by design unremarkable, the acolytes can discern the importance of these hidden messages by being aware of repeated sightings. Once aware, they can use this information to identify the heretics through the very ciphers intended to keep them hidden. And at last, the heresy by association. The most stringent and merciless of witch hunters often feel that association with a heretic is a sign of heresy in itself. Even if no other evidence is available, purging those affiliated with the heretic is safest. Friends and family of one might claim ignorance of their deeds, but mere proximity to such a corrupting influence might leave a stain on the soul. Even if only 1 in 1,000 such associates has truly been tainted by the acts or ideas of the heretic, it is safer to destroy them all. As it is said, innocence proves nothing. There is no greater enemy to the Imperium than the man who acts against it. Such a traitor shreds the very fiber of our holy existence. Never, ever forget this. From Cardinal Richter, an Inquisitor Hierophant of the Ordo Hereticus. Inquisitors of the Hereticus are commonly figures of incredibly strong will. Some are fitted with special psychic hoods designed to nullify hostile witcheries targeting their mind or person. Others prefer to trust in the Emperor, uttering litanies of protection and hate as they move against rogue psykers. As with the other orders of the Inquisition, the witch hunters are happy to use individuals with psychic powers provided they have been properly sanctioned. Perhaps surprisingly, there are many Inquisitors among the Hereticus who are capable of using psychic disciplines themselves. Woe betide the witch who is hunted by one such individual, for these Inquisitors are notorious in their zeal. Perhaps it is because they are fully aware of the terrible dangers that lurk within the warp, or perhaps it is a result of their training. Whatever the case, these psychic witch hunters will stop at nothing to destroy the corrupt and tainted. Some specialize in the identification and eradication of mutants. They may have numerous cells of acolytes at their disposal, which range from hive-toughened flamer squads trained to purge large, infected areas to precision assassination cells, which remove and replace key political figures that have succumbed to the lure of the Dark Gods. In most cases, such inquisitors will be less concerned with the mutants themselves and more with the causes of mutation. An outbreak of mutation may herald a terrible event, point to an upswing in chaos or xenophile cult activity, or simply be the inexplicable whim of the ruiner's powers. Whatever the cause, the Ordo Hereticus will require an investigation and purge. This can sometimes cause the Ordo to be involved in high-profile events, such as the removal of a head of state, the cleaning up of corrupted pollutants, or even outright war. Occasionally, the Ordo will find itself pitted against an individual being or phenomenon which presents a significant threat. This might be as varied as a psyker of unprecedented power, a mutant with terrifying abilities, or even a planetary governor unwilling to carry out necessary pogroms. In such cases, the Hereticus will excommunicate the offending person from the human species, and then hunt them down with frightening ruthlessness. The Ordo will call upon any allies they feel necessary, from the Sisters of Battle to members of other Adepta or servants of another Ordo. They are willing to do whatever is needed to get at the excommunicated party, even if it should mean sending the Astra Militarum against the Imperium's own people. Better to end 1,000 innocent lives than to suffer the spread of corruption to millions or even billions. Perhaps more so than other arms of the Inquisition, this Ordo is concerned with the big picture. Their duty tasks them with tending to a vast flock, and as such, individuals within that mass are seldom of importance. The Imperium is comprised of billions of souls, each of which is a potential psyker, mutant, or rebel. The Ordo Hereticus fights on countless fronts, endlessly, with no warning of where fresh heresy may arise. Whilst cells of acolytes or particular inquisitors may have the luxury of dealing only with the local situation, the scholars and masters of the Holy Ordos look upon events with a distanced eye, thinking in terms of star systems and sectors rather than planets or countries. To some observers, this impersonal attitude is vile, but to members of the Ordo Hereticus, it is necessary to protect mankind from itself. Now we come to the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Hereticus. They specifically employ the Adepta Sororitas, who are also known as the Sisters of Battle or the Daughters of the Emperor, and are a penitent organization within the larger Adeptus Ministorum of women devoted to the worship of the God Emperor of mankind and the orthodox interpretation of the Imperial Creed. Although there are many different orders within the Sisterhood that perform many different specialized functions across the Imperium, the most well-known are the Orders Militant, which form the military arm of the Ecclesiarchy and also serve as the Chamber Militant of the Ordo Hereticus. After the Age of Apostasy, the Ecclesiarchy was forbidden from possessing any men under arms by the Decree Passive, issued by the famous Ecclesiarch Sebastian Thor, the righteous successor of Gorge Vandar. A loophole was found and exploited by later ecclesiarchs by refounding the Daughters of the Emperor as warrior nuns after merging them into the Greater Sisterhood of the Adepta Sororitas. The Sisterhood serves, among its many other functions, as an internal regulator of the ecclesiarchy and as the army of the Adeptus Ministorum, spreading the true faith in the God Emperor throughout the galaxy. Centuries ago, following the Age of Apostasy, the newly reformed Adepta Sororitas and the Ordo Hereticus forged an agreement to assist one another in fighting the Emperor's enemies. This agreement, made at the convocation of Nephilim, is still shrouded in mystery, and it is suggested among some inquisitors that the Sisters of Battle and the Ordo Hereticus are following some secret plan that only the canonesses of the Sororitas and a few Inquisitor lords fully understand. Whether this is true or not, a witch hunter can expect to find common purpose with the Sisters of Battle, and the two organizations work together extensively. Although very different in their methods of tackling a problem or internal dissent, the Sisters and the Ordo Hereticus also share the common purpose of eradicating threats to the Imperium from within. Hereticus Inquisitors tend to be analytical, methodical, and suspicious, while the Sisters are zealous and unquestioning of Imperial Creed dogma. Even though the Adepta Sororitas and its Sisters of Battle remain part of the ecclesiarchy structure, they respond when called upon by Inquisitors of the Hereticus who need a more forceful resolution to a particular problem. These are the most notable of the Ordo Hereticus members. Starting off with Inquisitor Adrastia. Adrastia is a high-ranking Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus. She, alongside Lord General Castor of the Astra Militarum's Cadian shock troops, were ordered to the sub-sector Aurelia to investigate charges of heresy leveled by Captain Gabriel Angelos of the Blood Ravens chapter against his chapter master Azariah Kairos. She hoped to complete her investigation ahead of the arrival of an incoming Exterminatus fleet, which had been given orders to enact an Exterminatus upon all of the subsector's worlds to remove their growing chaos and Xenos taint from the Imperium. Next, Inquisitor Victoria Aldrich. Aldrich has never been a woman to take her work lightly. Even as a lowerly acolyte, she was well known for her verve and vigor. Her master, the venerable and cunning Ordo Hereticus Inquisitor Yusuf Travar, brought her under his wing specifically for the enthusiasm with which she approached the job of rooting out heretical and demonic infestation. A zealot like Aldrich was the perfect counterbalance to Travar's methodical trickery. After years in Travar's service, the bombastic and learned acolyte had learned much of her master's ways and tempered her enthusiasm with cunning and planning, retaining the gusto which was her hallmark. Aldrich is now an Inquisitor in her own right, with over a standard century of service to her credit. She continues to hound the spawn of chaos with energy and ardor, bringing the full weight of an inquisitorial position and her substantial personal prowess to bear on the enemies of man. Next, Inquisitor Agmar. As a young member of the Ordo Hereticus, Agmar led multiple attacks upon Ikar IV's capital city of Lomas to break up a rebellion launched by strange cult members. It turned out that the rebellion was created by a massive gene-stealer infestation. With the Adeptus Arbites, he destroyed enough of the defenses used by the cult's psychically enslaved members to allow the Ultramarines chapter to seize the planet. It was then that Agmar's Astro Pass felt the approach of Hive Fleet Kraken, and it was his initiative that led to the breaking of the Hive Fleet at Ikar 4. Next, Inquisitor Havelock Blackheel, a man of abounding faith in the God Emperor and possessed of a nearly limitless hatred for Psykers. Blackheel is as much a force of nature as he is an Inquisitor, a Puritan and mono-dominant. This Inquisitor has waged a one-man war against the Psykers for nearly a standard century. A large, hale man with a barrel chest and long locks, Havelock hails from Maccabeus Quintus, where, from an early age, he displayed a violent distaste for irregularity and a fiery zeal for orthodoxy. He harbors a special hatred for Psykers, passed to him from his parents, and upon joining the ranks of the Inquisition found kinship with the teachings of the Mono-Dominants. With his boundless energy and bewitching charisma, and for reasons he assures his followers have nothing to do with any personal friction with certain spineless cowards of the Ordo Calixis, he roots out the heretic and the heterodox on the fringe world of the Coronus Expanse with a zeal that raises eyebrows even among his allies. Next, Solas de Chêne. The woman in charge of the Ordo Hereticus activities on Eleusis is Solas de Chêne, a woman of unshakable faith and indomitable spirit. She has spent the last 12 standard years in Eleusis in constant vigil, her agents living out amongst the populace and reporting any suspicions or subtle signs of heresy directly to her. During this time, the Inquisitor has uncovered countless secrets hidden just below the surface of the reconstruction, both literally and figuratively. Next, Inquisitor Vaunus Cade. Inquisitor Vaunus Cade is a noted scholar, philosopher, and an optimist. He is also a skilled swordsman, irreverent, scoundrel, and a self-righteous reprobate. Named after the rogue hero of Cadaldinus' epic verse allegory, The Once Pure Hive, Cade has spent most of his life living up to his namesake's legacy. Originating somewhere east of Sol and west of Mackridge, Cade signed on with a free captain at a young age and has never looked back. The details of his elevation to Inquisitor status are hazy, change every time he tells the story. The only point that remains consistent is that he was once a member of the Ordo Xenos before finding his true calling as a witch hunter. Regardless of his checkered past, Inquisitor Cade has been a respected member of the Tyrantine Cabal for over a standard decade. Though he is nominally of Puritan leanings, he is a skilled psyker who fanatically believes in the psychic future of the human race and is willing to casually commit almost any atrocity in order to safeguard it. He and the martially inclined acolyte bands he employs spend a great deal of time traveling between the Calixis sectors' sub-sectors, chasing down rumors of hidden witches. Cade absolutely detests Ricus' methods and takes a great deal of pleasure in spiriting promising young psykers out from under the Witchfinder's pogroms. Cade appears exactly the way Imperium citizens picture a witch hunter, from his wide-brimmed hat to his inferno pistol, to the ancient short-bladed foresword named Slight Jest that he bears at his side. There is no mistaking his appearance and what it implies, which is exactly what he wishes. To him, the Tyrant Star prophecy is a delicious mystery to be unlocked. Next, Hetesh Kane. The sanctioned Psyker Hetesh Kane was once a renowned teacher in the Scholastica Sicana. He became a dedicated member of the Ordo Hereticus to hunt down and eliminate rogue psykers throughout the Imperium. However, his experiences and personal beliefs led him to become convinced that psykers could achieve nearly anything, if properly trained and possessing deep moral conviction. Over time, he began to train and teach those he captured rather than destroying them outright. Although he was not always successful, Cain sought to turn those who were once enemies into agents of the Golden Throne. Next, Fyodor Karamazov. Fyodor Karamazov is known and feared throughout the Imperium. He gained his fearsome reputation during an event on the planet of Salem Procol, when he executed a popular servant of the Adeptus Ministorum. This caused a huge outcry from the Ministorum's clerics and the Thorian Inquisitors, yet later it was discovered that the preacher had in fact truly been a heretic, and Fyodor's reputation was redeemed. However, relations between the Inquisitor Lord and the Ecclesiarchy and his fellow Inquisitors have yet to mend. Karamazov rides into battle on the massive war machine known as the Throne of Judgment. Next, Inquisitor Ligeia. Ligeia can be described as looking more like an elegant family matriarch rather than a hunter of demons. Ligeia was an unusual Inquisitor in that she did not see much combat but rather focused her efforts on texts and ancient writing. She possessed at least one minor psychic ability which allowed her to apprehend information simply by contacting an object, such as a book or a statue. She was recruited into the Ordo Hereticus at a very young age. She was attached to the Grey Knights chapter on the trail of Saint Evissa, looking for Gargatuloth, Prince of 1,000 Faces, a powerful greater demon of Zinj. Unfortunately, Ligeia eventually succumbed to the taint of Gargatuloth after allowing herself to delve too deeply into tainted knowledge, opening her mind to demons which caused her to lose her mind. Having gone quite insane and fallen mostly to chaos in the process, Ligeia was captured by the Inquisition she once served. However, having opened herself up to Gargatuloth, she was able to learn and reveal the true name of the demon to Justica Alaric through a recording of her interrogations, in which she babbled what was apparently a meaningless string of syllables. This gave the Grey Knights the advantage they needed in order to destroy Gargatuloth once every 1,000 standard years. Inquisitor Ligeia died in an interrogation room high above the planet Mimas when Inquisitor Nixos ordered her cell opened, venting her into space. Next, Witchfinder Rikus. Rikus is the terror of witches, a man for whom everyone is guilty of something and the only punishment is death. To him, the Calixtus sector is a cesspit where witches breed like flies and the honest, pious imperial citizens are besieged by sin on all sides. Rikus's bouts of volcanic anger and passionate sermonizing are well known at the Bastion Serpentis, and he constantly exhorts his fellow inquisitors to descend on all the sinners to purify them with righteous flame or condemn them to damnation. He wears ornate, heavily customized armor gifted to him by the Adeptus Mechanicus after he sought out a witch cult on a forge world in a nearby sector, and he is an expert with a veritable armory of weapons. The Witchfinder's methods are simple. He descends on a particular city, sees depravity everywhere, and immediately sets up a court of ordeals where pious citizens bring accused neighbors and family members to be tried. When Rikus hears of a particularly foul heresy being perpetrated somewhere nearby, he gathers all the torch-wielding backup he can and marches there, trusting in his martial skill to help him put the sinners to death personally. Some who witness his terrors consider him a hero, others a butcher, and both are right. Many innocents have died at his hands, but so have many rogue psychers and cultists. Rikus, however, is not as crude a man as his methods would suggest. He knows that he cannot kill all the sinners, but his bombastic, terrifying style ensures that Imperial citizens are constantly reminded that there are threats in their midst and bigger threats waiting to punish them for their weaknesses. Innocent deaths, while regrettable, are a small price to pay for Rikers to spread the fear that helps suppress the activities of witches, and in any case, the Emperor sorts them all out in the end. Rikers is obsessed with the notion that it is the widespread activity of witches in the sector that is bringing on the doom of the Hereticus Tenebrae. Next, Inquisitor Astrid Skane. A formidable woman, Inquisitor Skane exudes the wrath authority of a seasoned arbitrator officer. Tough and resourceful, she is one of the most active of the Tyrantine Cabal's Inquisitors, happy to get her hands dirty rooting out corruption. Skane is a striking woman with a stern, strong face who wears her hair regulation short. She habitually dresses much as she did when she served as an arbitrator on Scintilla, in a black uniform and body armor, and is rarely seen without her shock maul and shotgun. Skane respects those who respect her, treats her more skilled acolytes as equals, and has little time for pomp and appearances. Skane follows the Recongregators' creed, which states that the Imperium must be reformed radically to reduce the suffering of its people, and that the Inquisition is the only body with the authority and skill to reform it. She believes that the Imperium's woes are caused by corruption among its ruling classes. She developed a particular hatred for corrupt nobles while serving as an arbitrator, and has carried that through to her work as an inquisitor. Her operations, therefore, target corruption among the nobility and the Adepta, including the Adeptus Arbites she once served. She dreams of a future where the Imperium is turned upside down and justice is the rule rather than the exception, but she realizes that she will not live to see it. She fights for what justice she can and hopes that others will follow her to carry on the battle. Skane is convinced that the Tyrant Star can only be appearing due to some form of summons. She believes there is a powerful chaos cult at work in the sector, employing sorcery to call the Tyrant Star down on mankind. That is a cult she would very much like to personally root out. Next, Inquisitor Soldavan. A handsome man with skin the color of ebony and a taste in imposing military dress uniforms that only enhances his air of strength and authority. Soldavan was originally an interrogator in the employ of Witchfinder Rikus, but never believed in his master's extreme methods, and quickly broke with Rikus after attaining the Inquisitorial seal. Soldavan believes that knowledge, not wanton destruction, is the key to protecting humanity from the threats it faces. His beliefs run deeper than he would ever admit. He believes that the warp is an immense source of power, and that an Inquisitor is a man of sufficient intelligence and willpower to harness it. He wants to open up a pathway to the warp and seek out the consciousnesses that dwell there, hoping to bargain with them for the power he needs to combat the enemies of mankind. He has got quite close to his goal, and has several forbidden tomes in his possession that, with the right sacrifices and rituals, will summon 4 powerful demons for him to negotiate with. He is always seeking more knowledge or artifact of the warp, either captured during the Tyrantine Cabal's operations or purchased at extortionate prices from unscrupulous dealers in forbidden relics. Somewhere during this process, Soldavan has lost his sanity and replaced it with absolute conviction that the warp holds the secrets of humanity's survival. He believes that the Tyrant Star represents a vital conduit to secrets of the warp. Next, Inquisitor Tannenberg. Witchfinder Tannenberg was a Hereticus Inquisitor who uncovered the heresy and mutation within the Saint Garat Scriptorium, sending its adepts to the excruciation chambers and burning the scriptorium to the ground. Tannenberg was also responsible for executing all 45 members of the psycho-chaos cult known as the Coven of the Red Moon. Amongst his many acolytes is the scribe Lamont. Next, Inquisitor Thaddeus. Thaddeus was put in charge of hunting down and destroying the renegade Soul Drinkers Space Marine chapter. He is rather patient and does things slowly and concisely as to get them right. He shuns other Inquisitors who use force and fear on Imperial citizens to secure information. He believes in speaking to people politely and with respect to get what he needs. He seemed to make a deal with Sarpedon, the acting chapter master of the Soul Drinkers, when Sarpedon was injured badly and held by an insanely powerful mutant attempting to gain godhood in the warp known as Teteract. Thaddeus decided to spare Sarpedon after solar months of trailing the Soul Drinkers and learning about the tragedies which had befallen them. He fired on Teteract, giving Sarpedon time to finish him with the Soul Spear. Thaddeus decided that Sarpedon was not nearly as dangerous to the Imperium as Teteract was. He fell out of favor with the Lord Inquisitors for allowing the Soul Drinkers to continue to exist, but he still pursued them and eventually met his end facing down the Howling Griffon Space Marines after they saw him as Sarpedon's ally. Next, Witch Hunter Tyrus. Tyrus is a witch hunter and a staunch member of the mono-dominant sect of the Inquisition. As a child, he was tortured by the demon prince Koloth, who took one of his eyes and ears before destroying the rest of his village. Tyrus was saved from death at the demon prince's hand by the Inquisitor Cavonis, who then took Tyrus under his wing as an apprentice and acolyte. Cavonis was killed on the world of Epsilon Regalis by Koloth, but Tyrus successfully banished Koloth to the warp again, taking up his master's power armor and full sword. He was then elevated to the full rank of Witch Hunter and Inquisitor. He is highly active in the Imperium as an internal policer of heresy. He is known for carrying out extreme and bloody purges of suspected heretics on many worlds on regular occasions. He is also known to chase heretical inquisitors as strongly as he does witches. He has a great hatred for all kinds of psykers, even those found amongst his fellow inquisitors. His policy on guilt is based on religious testing and arcane methodology. Tyrus is known to use the ancient trial by ordeal to determine guilt or innocence of heresy or witchcraft in certain cases, such as the trial by balance, the ordeal of the blade, and the trial by holy seal, while his favorite method for determining guilt is to force the accused to consume a jug of holy water blessed by an Adeptus Ministorum priest. If they choke, then they are guilty of being a heretic in Tyrus's judgment and are immediately executed. Tyrus is also known to use the Emperor's Tarot to determine innocence or guilt. Next, Inquisitor Globus Varak. Severely wounded as an interrogator while boarding a pirate ship, Varak's body is broken, scarred, and bloated. Both his legs were amputated and he moves by means of a robust mechanical vehicle with mechanical legs and an inbuilt life support system. His face is horribly burned and pockmarked, with tubes running from his nostrils and mouth to help him breathe. One arm was also lost and has been replaced with an obvious bionic limb. Varak's clothing is a ribbed black body glove that barely holds in his enormous girth and which incorporates cooling and regulating devices to keep him alive. Varak is an Amalathian who believes that the Imperium, as grim a place as it is, must survive in its current state if the human race is to continue existing. He therefore seeks out sedition and rebellion in the Calixis sector, trying to maintain the careful balance of its power groups. Given that he cannot operate in the guise of a normal citizen or adept, he must conduct most investigations through his acolytes, of whom he has several teams. His methods are subtle and moderate compared to some of the Tyrantine Cabal's other Inquisitors, for he would prefer that the Inquisition's hand was not obvious, and encourages his acolytes to avoid open conflict and violence as much as possible. Varrock has a bleak and self-deprecating sense of humor, and is an excellent judge of character. Many of the Calixian Conclave's next generation of Inquisitors will come from among Varrock's interrogators, if he remains in favor. He has joined the Spectarians because the Tyrant Star represents a truly destabilizing threat to Imperial society. And Inquisitor Grendel. Grendel is an Inquisitor of the Ordo Hereticus who is in command of all the Acolytes and other Inquisition forces that have been deployed by the hive world of Atoma Prime in the Mobian domain to eliminate the Nurglish chaos infestation which has taken root in Atoma's capital of Hive Tertium. Grendel's true identity and appearance is a closely guarded secret. The only interaction between the Inquisitor and newly recruited acolytes aboard the modified Firestorm-class frigate Morning Star that serves as the mobile headquarters for the Inquisitorial force seeking to cleanse Hive Tertium is through a holographic transmission provided by a servitor outfitted with a hololithic projector. This message is seen during an initiation ceremony where the image of the Inquisitor's face and voice changes multiple times, taking on male, female, and even Ogryn identities. While Grendel and their true goals beyond cleansing the Nurglish infestation of the Hive City remain mysterious, it is believed that the Lehman Russ battle tanks produced in Atoma Prime's Manufactoria are vital to the Inquisitor's future plans. There is also a mention that Grendel has a personal interest in the investigation of the different strains of Nurgle's supernatural blights and contagions to be found among the Chaos Cultists and members of the Mobian 6th Traitoris Militarum Regiment, driving the spread of the corruption in Hive Tertium. Grendel requisitioned use of the Morning Star, a rogue trader vessel, to serve as the headquarters for all inquisitorial operations on Atoma Prime. The rogue trader hosting Grendel's retinue and warband of acolytes is Ship Mistress Amora Brahms, who appears to be a close ally of Grendel, and perhaps even a friend. Although Brahms is wary of the Inquisition's machinations and would gladly leave Atoma Prime if she was free to do so, she will remain resolute in the Ordo Hereticus' service until the chaos corruption of Hive Tertium has been cleansed. Grendel's retinue of trusted acolytes and the warband accompanying them was known to have quelled uprisings by heretics in 4 other star systems prior to arriving at Atoma Prime.